Chapter 820, Dr. Xiong. The old doctor's surname was Xiong, and he had a bear-like temper. However, he was a very professional doctor. He could not wait to see the patient before he finished his tea. Looking at him, Yundong thought of Songdejiang. Were all capable and confident doctors so strange? However, she insisted that Bianhan finish his breakfast before going to the doctor. Dr. Xiong was a little unhappy at first, but when he heard that the other party's stomach was not good, he immediately waved his hand and asked him to hurry up and eat. When they finished eating and started to look at his legs, the family began to prepare for battle. Dr. Xiong washed his hands and quickly sat opposite Bianhan. Seeing that his entire body was tense, he hurriedly waved his hand. Relax, relax. It's just a look. The treatment hasn't started yet, and it won't hurt. It's too early to be nervous. Bianhan laughed at his words and relaxed at that moment. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, Dr. Xiong knocked on his leg. He didn't know where it hit. Although it was just a light knock, it immediately hurt so much that tears were about to come out, and cold sweat kept flowing out. The others' hearts tightened. Yuanzhi hugged Dr. Xiong's hand. Don't hit me. It hurts too much. Dr. Xiong's mouth twitched. Then do you still want me to treat your father's legs? Yundong was not good at medicine, but she knew that she could not disturb the doctor's treatment, so she pulled Yuanzhi over. Only then did Dr. Xiong continue to check. Bianhan's nerves tensed up again, afraid that he would do it again. However, Dr. Xiong did not do anything unexpected after that. After checking the legs, he retracted his hand and lowered his head in thought. Everyone looked at him, but no one said anything to disturb him. However, his silence made people a little anxious. It was Qiuyue who asked him, "Can the legs be treated?" Oh, they can be treated. Really? Dafeng was instantly excited. She clenched her fists and looked at Bianhan. Father, did you hear that? Dr. Xiong said it can be treated. Bianhan nodded repeatedly. How could he not be happy that his legs could be cured? Then, Dr. Xiong, what do we need to prepare? Do we start treating him now? Dajiang was equally excited. Dr. Xiong glanced at everyone and said, whether the legs can be treated or not, we still have to ask for his opinion. What do you mean? His legs can be treated, but it's painful to treat them. I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand it. How so? Dr. Bear shrugged. First, we'll have to break his bones again, then set them back together. Break his bones again? Everyone gasped. Dafeng recalled the miserable cry of pain when her husband's legs were broken by a horse. Her face instantly turned pale, and her body trembled slightly. Others might not know, but Dafeng did. Although Bianhan was a man, he was actually especially afraid of pain. Dr. Xiong could also see this. The light tap just now was enough to make Bianhan break out in cold sweat and tremble in pain. The pain of having his bones broken again was really unbearable for him. Father Bian did tremble a little, but he looked at his legs and thought of his wife's and children's lives in the future. He gritted his teeth and said, No, it's okay. If you want to break the legs again, so be it. I can endure it. He could endure it? His voice was trembling. Bianhan took a deep breath and looked at everyone's worried gazes. Finally, his gaze landed on Dr. Xiong. He closed his eyes and said, Come, let's break them. Dr. Xiong was speechless. Now is not the time. Chapter 821. Warm and harmonious atmosphere. Everyone was stunned again. Why? His body is still too weak now. Didn't you just say that his stomach isn't good either? At the very least, we have to wait until his body recovers and his spirit is strong before I can start treating him. Wouldn't that mean that he would have to worry for a while? Bianhan trembled again. However, he still had to listen to the doctor. Dr. Xiong continued. Rest well during this period of time. I'll come to see you in a few days. When I think your body is good enough, we'll treat your legs. All right. Bianhan looked at Dafeng, looking like he wanted to cry but had no tears. Dafeng hesitated a few times, but she could not say anything. After seeing Dafeng, Dr. Xiong took her pulse and confirmed that she was also weak and needed to recuperate with Bianhan. Then he prescribed a few medicinal cuisines and got someone to make them for them. Yundong was surprised. This Dr. Xiong was indeed very capable. He actually knew medicinal cuisine. After the matter was resolved, Dr. Xiong left the Gu family, leaving the entire family behind. They did not know if they should be happy or worried. However, the medicinal cuisines that Dr. Xiong mentioned needed to be studied carefully. Auntie Nyo took the list. Still, she couldn't read very well, especially since Dr. Xiong's handwriting was flamboyant. It looked too strenuous. Gu Yundong could only follow her into the kitchen. Coincidentally, she was also very interested in the medicinal cuisines. As for the shop, she would go there another day. Her aunt's matter was more important, right? Xiao Qingyuan followed the instructions on the list and grabbed the herbs. Then he taught her how to recognize the words while watching her cook medicinal cuisines. After clarifying that, he left. Gu Dafeng felt bad. She felt that she should help. However, she was worried that she would be clumsy and waste all the ingredients and herbs. She could only help from the side. Yunshu, Yuanzhi, and the others had originally planned to go to Tianhai Academy today to take a look at the wall that was filled with names. Now they didn't go anymore. The two of them surrounded Bianhan and chatted nonstop. They used clumsy words to comfort him not to worry. His legs would be cured. It warmed Bianhan's heart, as if he was really not afraid at all. On the other hand, Yunke was also looking around the kitchen. Gu Yundong and Aunt Nyo were already used to it, but Gu Dafeng was not used to it. He was afraid that she would be scalded and hurt. It was only when she saw her washing and picking the vegetables that she remembered what Yuanzhi had told him yesterday. The young lady liked to eat and cook. Madame Yang was taking care of the flower pots with Lu Hongxiu. She had been in Yongfu village for some time, as if she was afraid that something would happen to these flowers. She had already checked yesterday, but she was worried and checked again today. The entire small courtyard entered in a warm and harmonious atmosphere, until Tong Shuitao returned. She went out early in the morning, and only returned at noon. As soon as she entered, she went to the kitchen to look for Gu Yundong. At the door, she cracked a few times, causing everyone in the kitchen to turn to look at her. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. You can't be considered mysterious anymore, all right? She put down the things in her hand, washed her hands, and followed her out. The two of them chatted at the side. Tong Shuitao looked mysterious. Gu Dafeng shook her head and smiled. She continued with her work. However, Gu Yundong did not return after a while. Auntie Nyo happened to have some words that she did not recognize and looked conflicted. Gu Dafeng took the list and went out to look for Gu Yundong. She did not expect them to be standing under the corridor talking. It seemed like she hadn't finished speaking when Gu Dafeng suddenly heard the words Gu Qiuyue. She could not help but be stunned. Chapter 822, Aunt Gus Concerns. Gu Yundong also saw her. Coincidentally, Tong Shuitao had finished speaking. She instructed her to continue listening, so she turned around and asked, "Aunt, what's wrong? Why are you looking for me?" Gu Dafeng retracted her thoughts and held the list in her hand. Auntie Nyo wanted to ask you what medicine this is." Gu Yundong took it and walked in. After entering the kitchen and discussing with Auntie Nyo, she noticed that Gu Dafeng had not entered yet. Stunned, she walked out again. "Aunt, what's wrong?" "I just heard Gu Qiuyue's name." Realization dawned on Gu Yundong, and she answered straightforwardly. "Yes, I asked Shuitao to keep an eye on the Zhou residence and watch Gu Qiuyue's movements." "Do you want to deal with her?" Gu Yundong did not hide it from her and nodded. She went too far. "Yundong." Gu Dafeng held her hand anxiously and said, "Forget it. Gu Qiuyue is indeed not a good person. But no matter what motives she had back then, she saved our lives in the end. For the past year, I've been her slave for her. Take it as repayment for saving our lives. Now that your uncle and I have left the Zhou residence, we only want to have nothing to do with her from now on. Just pretend that you don't know her from now on. You don't have to." Gu Dafeng knew that she did not know what was good for her. Yundong wanted to take revenge on Gu Qiuyue for their sake. But Gu Qiuyue was old Master Zhou's concubine now. Old Master Zhou doted on her very much. What if he went against the Gu family because of Gu Qiuyue? Could it be that she would implicate them after being saved by her eldest brother? She felt that Yundong was very powerful after hearing what Yuanzhi said last night. However, Gu Dafeng had never experienced it herself. She could not clearly understand how powerful Gu Yundong was. However, she had stayed in the Zhou family for a year, and had personally experienced how different the Zhou family was from the environment she used to be in. Gu Yundong saw through Gu Dafeng's concerns at a glance and understood her worries. Hence, she gently held her hand and smiled. All right, then I'll listen to you and let the grudge between the two of you be written off. Yes, she was referring to the feud between eldest Aunt Gu and Gu Qiuyue. However, she didn't say that the grudge between her and Gu Qiuyue didn't exist. Gu Yundong did not forget how Gu Qiuyue had conspired with Master Qian on the way to escape. She had gotten Fu Ming to lead them to chase after her family just to sell her and her younger siblings to Master Qian. That woman wanted them to live a life worse than death. At that time, Master Qian had chased after him with a group of people in a fierce manner, looking like he was determined to win. If not for the fact that she was smart and had a weapon in her hand, she would probably be in any brothel now. Her younger siblings might not even be alive. Was this something a biological aunt would do? Even a stranger would not be so vicious. Gu Yundong did not forget that when his father met Gu Qiuyue, she had deliberately misled him to Wanqing Prefecture. She had always remembered these grudges. Gu Qiuyue didn't save her life, so there was no such thing as a clean slate. Previously, Gu Yundong heard that she was already dead, so the hatred naturally dissipated. At most, Gu Yundong would lament that the wicked would be punished by the heavens. This person had finally gotten her retribution. But wasn't she still alive now? Furthermore, she was living happily. She was living a better and richer life than before. She even took pleasure in torturing eldest Aunt Gu and her husband. Then she had to settle the score properly. Chapter 823. Gu Qiuyue's amazing operation. Seeing that she had agreed, eldest Aunt Gu heaved a sigh of relief and smiled again. Gu Yundong pulled her into the kitchen and got busy again. But to Gu Yundong's surprise, before she could settle the score with Gu Qiuyue, the woman came to find trouble. After Gu Yundong found eldest Aunt Gu, she forgot about the portraits on the notice wall, and did not tear them off in time. Unexpectedly, Mrs. Run tore off the two portraits and followed the address on them to Aunt Ke's house. She told Aunt Ke that she knew where the two of them were. Aunt Ke was stunned. She had gone to the small courtyard frequently, especially because she had not seen Yunshu and Yuanzhi for a long time. Therefore, on the second and third day after the Gu family returned to the prefecture capital, she went to the small courtyard. Naturally, she knew about the joyous occasion of Yuanzhi and his parents reuniting. She had seen eldest Aunt Gu and Bianhan before, so she more or less knew about their experiences. While feeling pity for her, she also scolded Gu Qiuyue harshly. The person in front called herself Mrs. Run. Could she be Mrs. Run who was by Gu Qiuyue's side that Yundong mentioned? Aunt Ke pondered in her heart. She did not know what she was up to, so she nodded without batting an eyelid, indicating that she would bring her to meet the real person who was looking for her. Mrs. Run was a little surprised. She thought that the person who was looking for them was Aunt Ke, but she did not expect this to be just a place for contact. Why was the person behind this so mysterious? For a moment, Mrs. Run thought too much. She felt that the person who had spent so much effort to find eldest Aunt Gu and her husband probably had a feud with these two people. Otherwise, why would they go through so much trouble? Thinking of this possibility, Mrs. Run began to get excited. She followed Aunt Ke to look for Gu Yundong. On the way, she could not help but ask, "Sister, who is this person? What's their relationship with the person in this portrait? Who's your sister?" Aunt Ke's expression turned ugly. She looked at Mrs. Run, who was at least 10 years older than her, and almost couldn't help but spit on her face. She replied impatiently, "Ask them when you see them. I don't know." Mrs. Run felt that this person was difficult to get along with, so the smile on her face disappeared and she snorted. Aunt Ke brought her directly to Gus. Gu Yundong happened to be at Gus to look at the accounts and understand the recent income situation. Zheng Gang complained at the side. "Many people say that we have too little goods here. There's not enough for them to eat at all. The people in this prefectural city are rich. When they buy things, they plan to buy baskets of goods. If we limit their purchases, they will scold us." It was too difficult for him. Gu Yundong found it funny. Thank you, Uncle Xiong. That's not a big deal. We won't lose a piece of meat even if they scold us. In any case, they'll still spend money to buy our things. However, boss, are we really not considering opening another shop in the west of the city? This place was too far from the west of the city. The people who came to buy things from there scolded the most fiercely. Yundong also wanted to open it, but her energy was limited. This milk tea shop had just opened not long ago, so she had to take it one step at a time. However, she could indeed get prepared first. If there was a suitable shop, she could buy it first. At this thought, Yundong instructed Zheng to be careful. Just as Zheng had agreed, two people came in. The person in front was Aunt Ke. Yundong immediately went up to her happily. Aunt, why are you? Before she could finish speaking, Aunt Ke took a step to the side, revealing Mrs. Ren's wrinkled face. Chapter 824. What's your relationship with the person in this painting? Yundong's smile froze. She frowned slightly and looked at Aunt Ke. The latter introduced with a gloating expression. This is Mrs. Ren. She tore off the missing person portraits on the notice wall, and said that she knew the whereabouts of the people on the portraits. She specially came to tell us. Yundong was speechless. Yes, the portraits. She had forgotten to tear them off. However, Mrs. Ren actually wanted to tell her about the whereabouts of her eldest aunt and uncle? What kind of mess was this? Yundong thought for a while, then nodded at Mrs. Ren and said, Come with me. Let's talk in the backyard. Mrs. Ren had just finished sizing up the shop in front of her, and was thinking that this shop was quite big. Hearing Yundong's words, she quickly followed him with a smile. Aunt Ke also went to join in the fun. The three of them went to the backyard and sat on the stone bench. However, as soon as she sat down, Aunt Ke stood up. The weather was cold, and the stone stool was also cold. She went to the second floor and took a cushion for herself. When Mrs. Ren saw this, she was a little envious. She was the oldest here, and could not stand the cold the most. But since Yundong did not mention it, and Aunt Ke only took one, she could not say anything. However, she did not know that Yundong had deliberately chosen this place. In any case, she did not want to bring the stranger up to the second floor to chat in such a good environment. She was wearing too many clothes, and it was a little hot. It was good to have a breather. Su Changshan, on the other hand, did not know the inside story. He served tea to the three of them. Mrs. Ren took a sip and felt her body warm up. Yundong asked, You said that you have news about the people on the portraits? Is that true? You're not lying to me? No. How can this be a lie? That's hard to say, Yundong said lazily. Previously, there were several people who provided fake news for the bounties, making people happy for nothing. I hope what you said is not fake, or I'll get someone to kick you out. Mrs. Ren trembled violently and immediately raised her right hand to make an oath. I swear that what I said is true. If there's even half a lie, I'll be struck by lightning. Yundong raised her eyebrows. This woman was quite ruthless to herself. In order to make Yundong believe in her, Mrs. Ren quickly said, The woman on this portrait is called Dafeng, right? The man is called Bianhan, right? Yundong had more or less guessed what Mrs. Ren wanted to do. She was unhappy that Dai Wenhua had bought her aunt and uncle, and wanted to make things difficult for them. It was a pity that neither she nor Qiuyue would be able to get what they wanted. At the thought of this, Yundong became slightly excited. He looked at Mrs. Ren with shining eyes. Yes, that's her name. It seems that you really know where they are. Tell me, as long as the information you provide is true, I'll give you the bounty immediately. Mrs. Ren was also quite tempted by the bounty and immediately said, Gu Dafeng and Father Bian are now in Magistrate Dais residence. Young Master Dai bought them. Yundong's eyes lit up. Really? You're not lying to me. They're in the Dai residence? Yes, every word is true. Yundong laughed out loud. That's great. Aunt Ke raised her eyes slightly and snorted secretly. A drama queen. Seeing that she seemed to be very happy, Mrs. Ren frowned slightly and asked softly, Miss, can I ask you what their relationship is with you? Why did you spend such a high bounty to find them? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 825. Mrs. Run takes a huge blow. Yundong was still smiling. Hearing this, he waved his hand and said it nonchalantly. They're my aunt and uncle. I've been looking for them for more than a year. It's just that I haven't heard from them. Now I finally have news. Thank you. As she spoke, she sounded a little sad. I don't know if they've had a good year or if they've suffered, but it doesn't matter. Now that I've found them, I'll bring them home and definitely let them live a good life. Not to mention anything else, at least they won't have to worry about food and drinks. They'll have servants by their side to serve them. They'll be able to live a happy life after suffering. Mrs. Run felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Aunt and uncle? And she wanted them to live a good life? Was this person the daughter of the Gu family's first branch, as concubine Gu had said? Ren's mother felt sick. She shook her head in a daze. How could it be? How could it be? Why weren't they enemies? Actually, Gu Yundong was right. Mrs. Run and Gu Qiuyue were indeed very unhappy that Gu Dafeng and her husband could leave the Zhou residence and go to the Dai residence to follow young Master Dai, who had a bright future, especially when Gu Qiuyue had fallen out of favor. Initially, this matter did not have much to do with Mrs. Run. She did not have any grudges with Gu Dafeng. If they left, so be it. She would have less trouble. However, the bad thing was that Bianhan's words before he left completely ignited Zhou Dafeng's anger. Gu Qiuyue's good, simple, and kind character instantly collapsed, and she even pushed Zhou Dafeng into an extremely embarrassing situation. After all, Bianhan had said those words in front of Dai Wenhua. Now that young Master Dai knew that his concubine was actually such a vicious person, not only did he seem like a joke, but his taste was bad, so muddle-headed that he was fooled by a woman. Hence, Gu Qiuyue had fallen out of favor. Not only her, even Mrs. Run was affected. In the past, Zhou Dafeng could be tolerant of Mrs. Run on account of his mother, because Mrs. Run usually spoke eloquently and did not make any big mistakes. However, this did not mean that Mrs. Run could lie to him in front of everyone. Back then, she was the one who said that the couple was selling themselves. She said that Gu Qiuyue was kind and compassionate to accept them. Bullshit. What did she take him for? A servant actually fooled the head of the family. Not selling her was already the last act of filial piety to the old madam. Zhou Dafeng no longer cared about her confession and apology. He didn't even look at her. Mrs. Ren's heart was filled with hatred. She wished she could rush to the Dai residence and kill this couple. Hence, when Gu Qiuyue was indignant and wanted to cause trouble for them, Mrs. Ren thought of the two portraits. The two of them also guessed who the person was and finally felt that there were only two possibilities. One was enemy, and the other was family member or friend. However, no matter what, if they cared about Gu Dafeng and her husband, they would definitely go to the Dai residence to ask for them. Young Master Dai had just bought Gu Dafeng and her husband back for less than 2 days. He would definitely not be willing to give them back. Wasn't there a conflict now? In any case, even if there was no big conflict, a small trouble was enough to make Dai Wenhua's impression of Gu Dafeng and her husband worse. At the thought of Dai Wenhua, Mrs. Ren's hope was instantly reignited. She immediately said, "Miss, although the other party is your family, now that they have been bought by young Master Dai, they have already become servants of the Dai residence. Even if you want to bring them back to enjoy life, I'm afraid there's nothing you can do. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 826. I happen to know young Master Dai. Yes, that was it. Mrs. Run felt a little better. She suddenly felt that this seemed to be more painful for Gu Dafeng. Just think about it. It was not easy for her to find her family, but she could not reunite with them. The good days were clearly close, but she could only be a servant and continue to serve others. So what if Gu Yundong opened a shop, had money, and had servants? Wasn't Gu Dafeng still a slave? This feeling of helplessness was the most interesting. Mrs. Run could not help but smile as she thought about it. Aunt Ko also smiled slightly. Gu Yundong laughed twice and waved his hand. It's all right. I happen to know young Master Dai. He's a loyal person and has a good temper. If he knows the ins and outs of the matter, he will definitely let my aunt and uncle come back with me. When the time comes, They can still live a good life after being expelled from the slave registry. No matter what. Thank you for today. He knew young master Dai? The corners of Mrs. Ren's lips froze halfway. She was in a daze. Yundong was still laughing, mainly because she really could not hold it in anymore. This woman actually came to her door to seek abuse. She would feel sorry if she did not provoke the visitor with a few words. Cough cough, it was better to restrain herself. Yundong reached out and patted Mrs. Ren's shoulder. She said gratefully, "It's all thanks to you. Otherwise, I don't know when we would have met again. I'm really too happy. I can't wait any longer. I'll go look for young Master Dai now and meet my aunt and uncle. Thank you." With that, she stood up and ran off without even mentioning the bounty. However, at this moment, how could Mrs. Ren think of the bounty? She stood up numbly. She seemed to have heard Aunt Gu say that she would walk her out. She nodded blankly and walked out. Yundong only came down from the second floor after Mrs. Ren left Gus. He looked at Aunt Gu. "She's gone. She's gone." Aunt Gu looked at her speechlessly. "In order to shirk that bounty, you've put on a good show." "You can't say that." "What do you mean by shirking? My aunt and uncle have already returned home. So the news she provided that they're in the Dai residence is fake. She lied to me and I'm already being polite by not kicking her out. She still wanted a bounty. Dream on." Yundong returned to the counter and continued talking to Zhang. Aunt Gu pointed at her forehead. "Anyway, you're right. There's nothing else for me to do here. I'll go back first." "Don't go back yet. Let's go back to the small courtyard for dinner later. Next time." Aunt Gu waved her hand and left. Now that the Gu family was reunited, she did not want to join in the fun. It was better to go home. Seeing that she insisted, Yundong did not ask her to stay. He lowered his head and continued to look at the account book. Zhang was right. The business in this shop was really good. In just half a day, there were already a lot of customers. She saw that Su Changshan didn't rest at all. He was so busy. It seemed like she wouldn't let him down if she didn't give him a raise. Yundong closed the ledger. Seeing that it was rare for him to rest, he waved him over and asked, "I heard that you moved? Where did you move to?" Su Changshan wiped his sweat with a towel and replied, "It's just a little over Xingtao Street. Just a walk of almost an hour." Xingtao Street, Why does it sound so familiar? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 827, It's hers. Yundong thought about it. Wasn't it the place where Xiaoyuan's family used to live? That position, Yundong asked curiously. I remember that there's a group of local tyrants living there. They're quite fierce. Su Changshan nodded. Indeed. When my mother was looking for them, she was deceived by that person. The person didn't tell us that there were local tyrants who would wander outside. My mother saw that it was close to Su Qing's shop and the rent wasn't expensive, so she quickly rented it. In the end, on the day we moved, there was indeed a local tyrant who came looking for us. At this point he laughed. But for some reason, although the local bully was very arrogant when he came to our door, when he saw us he suddenly cowered. I didn't even have time to take a stick before they ran away in a hurry for no reason. It was as if they were afraid of me and never came again. Yundong blinked and quickly understood. When Gus opened, the local gangsters were waiting outside to cause trouble. Therefore, they must have seen Su Changshan as a worker and knew that he was from Gus. Gus had a powerful backer, so they were afraid of Su Changshan, so they naturally didn't dare to come and cause trouble. Zhang, who was at the side, also laughed out loud. This is not inexplicable. These local tyrants have come to find trouble with Gus in the past, but they were ruthlessly taught a lesson by the boss and Qiuyue. They're afraid. I reckon that they must know that you're a worker here. Su Changshan was surprised. Is that so? In that case, it's all thanks to boss and young master Xiao. Regardless of the reason, since you're our shop's assistant, if you encounter trouble, you can tell the shopkeeper or me. If we have the ability to help, we won't ignore it. If he became her shop assistant, he would be hers. Su Changshan nodded repeatedly. Thank you, boss. But we're no longer in trouble. I haven't seen those local tyrants for a long time. Ever since we moved in, not only have they not come to my house, but they haven't even come near our house. Xiao Yuan even said that she has to thank me for this and gave us 2 pots of flowers. Oh, Xiao Yuan is our neighbor, a little girl. Gu Yundong exclaimed. Is it Xiao Yuan who grows and sells flowers at home? Yes. Boss, do you know her? That's right. I didn't expect the 2 of you to become neighbors. You're quite fated. Su Changshan chuckled again. After they said a few words, another guest came. Su Changshan hurriedly went to entertain them. Gu Yundong went to the storeroom to take a look and asked about the delivery. She thought that there was a huge demand now, and she needed more people to deliver the goods. In particular, her business was actually quite eye-catching. She had to hire some skilled people. Gu Yundong finished reading the shop and account book. Seeing that it was getting late, she left Gus. When she thought of what Mrs. Run had done previously, she could not help but feel happy. She even bought some food from the snack shop on the way home, and went to the ready-to-wear shop to bring home the 2 sets of clothes that she had ordered for eldest Aunt Gu and her husband. At this moment, Mrs. Run, who was on the other side, seemed to have suffered a huge blow and returned to the Zhou mansion in a daze. Gu Qiuyue was waiting anxiously in the snow-blowing garden. When she saw her, she rushed over and grabbed her shoulders. She asked anxiously, "How is it? Did you see them? Did you find out what relationship that person has with Gu Dafeng? Do they have a feud? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 828. She's the one who should enjoy her life. Mrs. Run looked at Gu Qiuyue in front of her. The corners of her mouth opened and closed for a long time, but she could not say a word. Gu Qiuyue was extremely anxious. Say something. What's their relationship? No, not an enemy but a relative, and Mrs. Run wanted to cry but had no tears. She slowly told Gu Qiuyue what she had found out. Gu Qiuyue was stunned. She fell back into her chair in disbelief. Her pupils constricted as she muttered to herself. You're saying that that person is Gu Yundong? She opened a shop and is rich now. She even knows the young master of the prefecture magistrate's family. She will bring Gu Dafeng and his wife back and enjoy life? As she spoke, she suddenly laughed. Mrs. Ren, are you joking with me? She did not believe that Gu Yundong was still alive. How could Gu Dafeng enjoy life? Why? Why could she only be someone's concubine and be tortured by the main wife every day? Now she was even despised by the old master. And Gu Dafeng, Gu Yundong, and the others had to live better and better? There was no such logic. She was the one who was supposed to enjoy life. Gu Qiuyue suddenly stood up. I don't believe it. I want to take a look. I have to see it with my own eyes. As she spoke, she rushed out. Mrs. Ren's expression changed and she hurriedly hugged her. Aunt, calm down. I'm not calm. I just can't let them have a good life. Her eyes were red with hatred. She was indignant about Gu Dafeng, but she really hated Gu Yundong. If she hadn't caused Master Qian's death back then, Master Qian's subordinates wouldn't have blamed her. They had chased after her and wanted to take her back to report. She wouldn't have been separated from Fu Ming and her daughter wouldn't have died tragically. If not for Gu Yundong, their family would still be together. It was all because of her. Because she hated Gu Yundong but had nowhere to vent her anger. When she saw Gu Dafeng and her husband who were close to Gu Yundong, she brought them back to the Zhou family to torture and humiliate them. She wanted them to live a life worse than death to atone for Gu Yundong's sins. The more Gu Qiuyue thought about it, the more she hated it. Mrs. Run could barely hold her. Seeing that there were people poking their heads over, she panicked and pinched Gu Qiuyue hard, finally waking her up from the pain. Mrs. Run said anxiously in a low voice, Aunt, calm down. There are people staring at us outside now. Do you want to be sold by master? Gu Qiuyue shuddered. Of course not. She couldn't cause any more trouble now. Otherwise, Zhou Dafu would lose his last bit of patience. But, Mrs. Run pulled her back to her seat and said softly, I know Auntie is indignant, but it's already so late. Even if you go to look for her, you won't be able to see her. Moreover, there are people watching outside. Don't worry, I'll arrange it. We'll find a way to sneak out tomorrow. Gu Qiuyue nodded in a daze. All right, I'll listen to you. Mrs. Run sighed. Seeing that the people outside had left, she sat down. This snow-blowing garden was no longer the original snow-blowing garden. Ever since Master found out about Concubine's true colors, he was worried about her. Coupled with Madame adding fuel to the fire, almost all the servants in the snow-blowing garden had been changed. A few of them were planted by Madame. This made Mrs. Wren's hands and feet tied. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 829. Find her. To be honest, Mrs. Run blamed Qiuyue in her heart. In order to vent the anger in her heart, she actually allowed her sister and brother-in-law to be beaten and scolded at will. In the end, after the matter was exposed, she was also blamed by the old master, and her status in the residence plummeted. However, she had no choice now. Qiuyue was not very knowledgeable. Other than being unclear about Dafeng, she listened to her. Moreover, although old master hated Qiuyue, he still let her stay in the snow-blowing garden safely. This meant that old master still cared about their affection. It was not impossible for her to make a comeback. Mrs. Wren still wanted to use her to continue acting like a tyrant in this residence. After comforting Qiuyue, Mrs. Wren went back to work. The next day, she asked one of her trusted maids to change her clothes with Qiuyue, and pretended to be uncomfortable in the room. Anyway, Qiuyue pretended to be sick for 2 days in order to regain Zhou Dafa's attention. The servants who were watching over them were used to it, and would deliberately mock her, and pretend not to know, let alone invite a doctor. Then Mrs. Wren took Qiuyue out of the back door with the excuse that she was going to get some medicine for concubine Gu. Gus was a little far away. By the time Qiuyue arrived outside Gus, it was already noon. There were many people on this street and there were many guests in Gus. Qiuyue stood far away, and could not see the people inside clearly. She frowned and asked Mrs. Wren, "Are you sure this is Gu Yundong's shop? How can she open such a big shop and have such a good business?" Mrs. Wren was stunned for a moment. Actually, she was not very sure. But yesterday, Gu Yundong indeed acted like she was the master of the house. Even the shopkeeper in the shop did not say anything when he saw her bringing people to the backyard. Wait, perhaps Gu Yundong had something to do with the shopkeeper? Seeing how innocent Gu Yundong was, and how she told her everything she asked, it did not seem like he could open a shop. At the thought of this, Mrs. Wren felt a little more confident. Let's go closer and take a look. Qiuyue stuck her head out for a long time. In the end, she only saw the shop assistant coming back and forth. She felt very anxious. You should have asked around yesterday to find out where her family lives. Mrs. Wren resisted the urge to roll her eyes. What excuse did she use to inquire about other people's residences? She was also annoyed, but she still brought Qiuyue forward. Seeing that they were getting closer and closer to the shop, someone suddenly walked out of Gus. It was a woman. Qiyue's eyes widened. That's Gu Yundong? Mrs. Wren saw it too. She pursed her lips and nodded. Qiuyue clenched her fists. She was really here. Was she really the owner of this shop? The hatred in her eyes was about to spread. Her emotions shot towards Gu Yundong at the door, making her look over as if she had sensed something. Mrs. Wren's expression changed drastically. She turned around abruptly and stood in front of Qiuyue, blocking their vision. Gu Yundong only took a glance before quickly retracting her gaze. She just smiled and asked Tong Shuetao, who was standing beside him, "Where are they standing?" "That's right. I thought I hid it very well." Tong Shuetao was very speechless. Didn't they know that her whereabouts were very eye-catching? As she spoke, a carriage slowly drove over from the street. When it reached the entrance of Gus, it slowly stopped. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 830. She's going to tear them up. Gu Yundong glanced in Qiyue's direction again, before walking towards the carriage. The carriage door opened and Yunshu and Yuanzhi jumped out. Then they turned around and let Gu Dafeng, who was behind them, get out. Gu Yundong smiled. "Aunt, you're here?" "That's right." Gu Dafeng had been recuperating well for the past 2 days, and was much more energetic. The two children said that I couldn't stay at home all day, and insisted on dragging me out for a walk. Coincidentally, they wanted to come to the shop to take a look, so I came with them. You should come out for a walk. Didn't Dr. Xiong say that walking is good for your health? Bianhan couldn't come out because of his legs, and he didn't want to trouble others, so he continued carving wood at home with a knife. Xiao Qingyuan said that he would get someone to make a wooden wheelchair for him. In any case, it would take a long time for him to recover after he treated his legs. It would be more convenient to sit in a wooden wheelchair. However, it was not done yet. He had to wait a few more days. Sister, is this our shop? Yunshu walked inside excitedly. He had been in the prefectural city for a few days, but he had never come to the shop because of various things. Now he finally saw it. Yuanzhi was still standing on the spot, holding Gu Dafeng's hand. Ever since he reunited with his parents, he had become different. With someone to rely on, he felt much more at ease. The carriage behind the two of them was pulled away by Lu Sheng, who had brought them over. The area at the entrance instantly became much empty. Hence, when Mrs. Ren, who was not far away, stepped back and no longer blocked Gu Qiuyue, she immediately saw Gu Dafeng and her son holding each other's hands. How could this be? Gu Qiuyue widened her eyes in disbelief. Gu Yundong had actually asked Gu Dafeng to come over from young Master Daya's side. Not only that, but Gu Dafeng had also put on new clothes. She was radiant and reunited with her son. It was as if all the suffering before was an illusion. Her good days had really come. She couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand it. Gu Qi's eyes turned red as she walked towards Gus. Mrs. Ren cursed in her heart and quickly hugged her. Aunt, calm down. How can I calm down? Gu Yundong clearly deserves to die, but she actually opened such a big shop now. Gu Dafeng should have been stepped on by others and served others as a slave for the rest of her life, but now, she's actually wearing gorgeous clothes and reunited with her son. Someone even drove a carriage for her. Why? Even she didn't have any of these. What right did these two bitches have to enjoy it? She couldn't stand it. Gu Qiuyue exerted all her strength to break free from Mrs. Ren's grip. The passers-by looked at them and pointed at them with strange expressions. Mrs. Ren was anxious, afraid that the commotion here would attract the attention of Gus people. But this time, even if she pinched Gu Qiuyue hard, it would be useless. There was only one thought in Gu Qi's mind. She would go up and tear them apart. Mrs. Ren was secretly annoyed. I know you're unwilling, but what can you do even if you're unwilling? Could it be that you can kill them? You can't do anything. Once you rush in front of them, you might be grabbed by the shop assistants and shopkeepers and sent to the government office. Do you want Master to give up on you completely? Gu Qiuyue was stunned, and the commotion quietened down. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 831, Resurrection. Mrs. Ren heaved a sigh of relief and continued. And don't forget that Gu Yundong knows young Master Dai from the prefecture magistrate's office. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to bring Gu Dafeng and his wife home in just half a day. Later, she will complain to young Master Dai. If young Master Dai wants to pursue the matter, old Master will be the first to not let you off. Gu Qiuyue listened and finally calmed down completely. Her flushed face gradually returned to normal. Mrs. Ren continued. I didn't bring you here today to agitate you to risk your life. I wanted you to see with your own eyes that their lives are good now. You can't touch them easily. Gu Qiuyue suddenly turned around and glared at her. She sneered. Are you trying to tell me that I'm just a concubine who has fallen out of favor? The tables have turned. Do I have to kowtow and apologize to them when they see us? No, I want you to know that you can only deal with them if you're strong and stand higher than them. Gu Qiuyue was stunned for a moment. After a while she snorted. You make it sound so easy. How can I stand higher than them? I'm just an unloved concubine now. I don't have money or anyone in my hands. I don't even know young Master Dai. Mrs. Ren wanted to roll her eyes. This person was really insensible. That's why you have to fight for it. You have to obtain old Master's love again, and become the mistress of the Zhou mansion. Mrs. Ren's eyes were shining. You have to do everything you can to squeeze Madam out. When you can make a decision in the manner, you will be able to know the madams of the real rich families in the prefecture city. So what if you don't know young Master Dai? Can't you know Miss Dai and Madam Dai? As long as you build a good relationship with them, what else do you have to worry about? The picture that Mrs. Run had drawn for her was so beautiful that she began to tremble with excitement. Yes, so what if Gu Yundong knew young Master Dai? When she got to know Madam Dai, she would tell Madam Dai that Gu Yundong was shamelessly hooking up with other men and wanted to seduce young Master Dai to marry into the Dai family. At that time, she would not even need to do anything and Gu Yundong would be directly dealt with by Madam Dai. Perhaps in order to prevent future troubles, not only Gu Yundong, but the entire Gu family, including Gu Dafeng, would be thrown into jail and finished together. Qiuyue laughed. She was so excited that her eyes were red and her fingers were cracking. Mrs. Run heaved a sigh of relief. Qiuyue was a country bumpkin who didn't know anything. In addition, she was blinded by hatred, so she fell for her tricks. She knew very well that even if Qiuyue got rid of Mrs. Zhou, she might not be able to become the first wife. Even if she became the first wife, she would definitely not be able to get to know someone like Madam Dai. It was impossible for Madam Dai to like her at all. But so what? As long as she listened to Mrs. Run and pulled Mrs. Zhou down, everything else was not important. Qiuyue tried her best to retract her gaze from Gus and look elsewhere. Only then could she listen to her mother calmly. All right, I'll listen to you. What should I do next? Get pregnant with a son. Qiuyue frowned. But now Old Master has already. So what? Old Master still has some feelings for you. As long as it's a little, you can revive. At that time, you can seize the opportunity. When you have a son, you will have a bargaining chip to fight with Mrs. Zhou. Although Qiuyue frowned, she still nodded. Mrs. Run was satisfied. Let's go. I'll tell you what to do when we get back. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 832. The Jumpy Yunshu and Yuanzhi. Qiuyue looked at Gus unwillingly and left angrily. Neither of them knew that not far behind them squatted a woman who had her ears pricked up and was pretending to wipe her shoes. Seeing that they were about to leave, that person stood up and walked towards Gus with her head lowered. Gu Yundong was introducing the items in the shop to Gu Dafeng. When he turned around and saw Tong Shuetao, he nodded slightly and said, "Aunt, go upstairs and rest for a while." Then, she called out to Yunshu and Yuanzhi, who had already gone to the backyard. "The two of you, help Aunt to the second floor and enjoy the scenery." Eldest Aunt Gu looked at her helplessly. "What do you mean by helping me? It's not like I can't walk. Why do I need to help?" However, Yunshu and Yuanzhi had already run over quickly and grabbed her hands from both sides. "Aunt, this way. Be careful." "Mother, let's go to the second floor. I heard from Kiki that the second floor of this shop is very beautiful. The seats upstairs are soft and comfortable." Gu Dafeng looked at the two of them lovingly and let them hold her hand as they walked upstairs. Gu Yundong waved his hand. "I'll pour tea for you." As she spoke, she really walked towards the backyard. Tong Shuetao hurriedly followed. The two of them asked as they walked, "Have those two left?" Tong Shuetao nodded. "They went home." "What did they say?" "I didn't dare to get too close, but when Qiuyue lost control, I vaguely heard something about unwillingness. Mrs. Run persuaded her to go back and get pregnant first before becoming the first wife. I couldn't hear what happened after that, but I think she mentioned young Master Dai and Madam Dai." Gu Yundong walked to the kitchen and poured fruit tea for them while smiling. "Looks like the backyard of the Zhou mansion is about to welcome a storm of blood. Miss, what should we do?" Gu Yundong placed the cups on the tray. Tong Shuetao hurriedly picked up the teapot, and the two of them walked to the second floor of the shop. "What should we do?" "Oh, Tao, concubine Gu has been with Zhou Dafu for more than a year, right? I heard that Zhou Dafu dotes on her, but she is not pregnant yet." Tong Shuetao was stunned. "Miss, you mean?" "Not necessarily. It's only a year." Gu Yundong shook her head. "It's normal for some people to take 3 to 4 years to get pregnant, but, until now Zhou Dafu only had one son. He didn't even have a daughter. Qiuyue wasn't his only concubine. She smiled and said nothing more. They were already standing on the second floor. Tong Shuitao didn't understand. But what? Why did Miss say half of it? Yundong walked into the attic on the second floor and saw the two children lying on the sofa. It's really comfortable. I can even sleep on it. Look at this pillow. It's soft and can even lean against the wall. There's even a storybook here. Wow, I didn't even see one in the county city. There are many bookstores in the prefectural city. There will definitely be many books. Then let's go to the bookstore in the prefecture next time. Sure. When the time comes, we can come here and sit in such a comfortable chair while drinking milk tea and reading scripts. Ah, this is simply a day for immortals. Yundong, who was standing at the door, was speechless. Why were these two so jumpy when she was not around? Ahem. She coughed heavily. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 833 Misread. The two children heard the commotion and stood up in a second. Yundong walked in and looked at the two of them with a faint smile. The two little guys chuckled at her and sat back down. They even jumped on the cushions. Eldest sister, it's too comfortable here, so the small people in our hearts came out and spoke by themselves. We weren't the ones who said those words just now. Yes, it's not us. Yuanzhi nodded vigorously with a serious expression. The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. Just continue to make up stories. Their imagination was quite wild. Even the small people in their hearts had come out. Would another little person appear later? Would the two little people fight in their minds? All right, I won't stop you in your own home. If you want to jump, then jump. However, you can't do this when you're outside. Yunshu immediately ran over. No, we're very obedient outside. Everyone says that I'm cute and wants to snatch me home to be their son. Yuanzhi covered his mouth and laughed at the side. There were really people who saw that Yunshu was smart, good at studying, obedient, and good-looking. They said that they wanted to bring him home. In the end, Yunshu was so frightened that he thought it was true. He lectured that person for the entire afternoon, saying that it was wrong to abduct children. Other people's children would be ingrates if they were brought back. If he left his parents, sister, he would not be able to eat or sleep. Then, he would die of depression and haggardness. Then he would not let them off even if he turned into a ghost. The corners of the person's eyes twitched, and he had a splitting headache. He repeatedly promised and raised his hands to swear that he would not snatch him back before Yunshu was willing to let it go. From then on he was given a nickname in school, the relentless boy after death. Yunshu did not say these things. He felt that this nickname was not good and would damage his image. Yundong knocked Yunshu's head and placed the tray on the table. She then asked, "Where's Eldest Aunt?" She just saw a vendor walking past below by the window. Eldest Aunt went down. As soon as she finished speaking, Dafeng returned. Yundong asked curiously, "Aunt, what did you see?" "I'm fine. I saw wrongly." She had been looking down from upstairs and almost thought that the person carrying the burden was her fourth brother. However, when she walked down, she realized that it was not the case. Now that she had reunited with her eldest brother, the whereabouts of the others were clear. Only her fourth brother was still unknown. Yundong saw that she was unwilling to say more, so she did not ask further, and handed her a cup of fruit tea. The fruit tea was sour and sweet. Eldest Aunt Gu took a sip, and could not help but widen her eyes. "It's delicious." The other two children had already gulped down half a cup. "Eldest sister, can we make this at home in the future?" "Okay." Eldest Aunt Gu looked at the children, and her depressed mood improved again. She finally had a chance to size up the attic. "This place is really comfortable. Yundong, how did you think of this?" "I just thought I liked it, so I got someone to make it. However, this place is still a little small and simple. The milk tea shop is really beautiful." She happened to go to the milk tea shop yesterday, and did not tell Madame Dai and Xiong. She wanted to experience it as a guest, and see if there was anything that needed to be improved. After checking it, it was quite good. At least in terms of eating and drinking, It tasted very good. When Yunshu heard her mention the milk tea shop, she quickly said, "Sister, can we go now? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 834. To the milk tea shop. Now, Yunshu said pitifully, "We only have a few days of vacation left. I've agreed with Yuanzhi that I have to go to Aunt Kes' house and let him see the courtyard I lived in back then. I also have to go to Tianhai Academy to experience the strong academic atmosphere. I also have to go to the bookstore and find a storybook. No, find scriptures to read." There were so many places he had to go. His schedule was too full and he was so busy. It was really not easy. Yundong felt sympathy for him. She thought that since there was nothing important in the afternoon, she might as well go. "All right, I'll take you there." At this time there shouldn't be many people. It wouldn't be a problem to bring the two children over. The milk tea shop allowed children, but it was only limited to people under the age of 10. Moreover, most of the people who brought children went to private rooms. The two children immediately cheered and raised their heads to finish the fruit tea in their cups. Dafeng shook her head helplessly. She drank very slowly. The doctor said that her stomach was not good now, so she had to drink and eat slowly to avoid getting injured too quickly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yunshu and Yuanzhi went to the cabinet on the wall to look for storybooks. "I've never seen this before. Let's bring it back." Last time, Junjie said that he couldn't find this book in the bookstore in the county city for a long time. I'll bring it back for him. He'll definitely be happy. When Dafeng heard this after drinking, she immediately frowned slightly and asked Yundong softly, "Is that okay? Can they read storybooks? Will it affect their studies? What if the teacher finds out and is disappointed in them and punishes them?" Yundong comforted her. "It's all right. Mr. Qin doesn't object to students reading miscellaneous books. As long as they have a sense of propriety and it doesn't affect their studies, it doesn't matter if they read some storybooks. If it affects normal classes, he will confiscate the students' miscellaneous books and carry out, yes, special education." Dafeng did not understand special education, but from what Yundong said, it was allowed by the teacher. Moreover, the teacher was the top scholar, so there was definitely no problem. Dafeng was relieved. The two children had also picked 3 books and put them away. They smiled at Yundong. Yundong crossed his arms and looked at them with a half-smile. "Did a small person crawl out of your heart just now and control your hands to get the storybook? Sister, you're really good at predicting." "Damn you, glib-tongued." The group went downstairs and informed Zhenggang. Then they rode the carriage to the milk tea shop. Tong Shuetao did not go. She still had something on. The name of the milk tea shop was New Tea Pavilion. Nie Shuang and Madame Dai insisted on her naming it. Yundong thought that she was bad at giving names and gave up on herself. She thought that if they were not satisfied, they could think of something else. Unexpectedly, the two of them agreed to it. It was simple and clear, allowing people to know what the shop was for at a glance. Wasn't milk tea new tea? No one had seen it before. Yundong was speechless. Huh? Was it that rash? Yes, it was a very rash name, so much so that Yundong did not often mention the name of the milk tea shop. Anyway, when she saw this name, she had no idea. The carriage stopped at the entrance of New Tea Pavilion not long after. Before the two children got out of the carriage, they had already lifted the curtains and saw the two-story tall shop in front of them. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 835. New Tea Pavilion. New Tea Pavilion? They got out of the car. Yunshu and Yuanzhi looked up at the name on the plaque, deep in thought. Yundong coughed lightly and was about to say, "Hurry up and go in. There's nothing interesting about this name." Unexpectedly, Yunshu suddenly said, "Cook new tea from the river and by all the green mountains as a drawing screen." When I see these 2 words, I can feel that this tea shop gives people a leisurely feeling. Huh? Are you sure? It was rare for Yundong to have a knot in her head. She looked at the plaque above her head with a gratified expression. Relief? Gu Yundong shivered and quickly said, "All right, don't stand at the door. Let's go in first." Only then did they walk in. New Tea Pavilion's business was really booming. Even if it was not time for afternoon tea, more than half of the people in the hall were already seated. Most of these people were dressed gorgeously and spoke very softly. Even when they smiled, they covered their mouths with a handkerchief. Therefore, when she entered, she had a quiet and elegant feeling. However, Gu Dafeng was so shocked that she did not dare to walk forward. So this was what the so-called milk tea shop was like. She thought that it was similar to Gus. However, when she came in, she realized that it was completely different. She stood here as if she had walked into another world. She looked especially out of place. Gu Yundong took a few steps and realized that her aunt was not following her. She quickly turned around and saw that she was at a loss. She was shocked and immediately took a few steps back to support her arm. Gu Dafeng grabbed her tightly. "Yundong, I don't think I should go in." Gu Yundong thought for a moment. "It's fine. Well, go to the private room. It's not in the hall. Eldest aunt, don't be afraid. I'm here. Yuanzhi is also here. This is my shop. You're an esteemed guest here. Come, hold your head high. I'll bring you in." She did not know if it was because of what Gu Yundong had said, but with her and Yuanzhi around, eldest Aunt Gu felt a surge of vigor. Yes, what was there to be afraid of? This shop belonged to Yundong. If she didn't even dare to enter her niece's shop, not only would she embarrass herself, but she would also embarrass Yuanzhi. Gu Yundong looked at her slightly raised face and smiled. She still wanted her eldest aunt to become the hearty eldest aunt of the past. How cute, right? Let's go. I can do it. Gu Dafeng also smiled. She was still very nervous, her palms were sweaty, and her back seemed to be sweating. She could even feel the guests in the hall looking over. But it didn't matter. She had Yundong by her side. She wasn't afraid. Gu Yundong held her arm and walked steadily to the counter with a smile on her face. Yunshu and Yuanzhi were already standing in front of the counter. When they saw the menu beside them, they couldn't help but lean over to take a look. There was a lady behind the counter. She smiled and asked them, "Did the two young masters come here on their own?" Yunshu looked up and met the eldest sister with a sweet smile. Her eyes were also bright. "No, I came with my sister and aunt." Then she pointed in Gu Yundong's direction. The girl was still smiling as she looked in that direction. The smile remained on her face, but her eyelids twitched violently. Gu Yundong lowered her head and whispered to eldest Aunt Gu. She did not see her. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 836. Gu Yundong is bankrupt? When she reached the counter, she asked the two children, "Have you thought about what to eat and drink?" "I want to drink milk tea and eat those fries," Yunshu said quickly. "I want double skim milk." Yuanzhi had a special fondness for this. "And chicken nuggets." Gu Yundong looked at eldest Aunt Gu again. The latter did not know how to read and did not know what delicious food there was. She was a little nervous. But with Gu Yundong by her side, she quickly calmed down. "Just order. I don't know what to drink." Gu Yundong thought for a moment and said to the girl, "Then give me another pot of osmanthus tea and a plate of osmanthus cake." She said to eldest Aunt Gu, "Osmanthus tea is good for the stomach. During this season, the osmanthus flowers this year have been plucked and dried. The osmanthus flowers in New Tea Pavilion are all fresh." "All right, I'll try," Gu Yundong said to the girl. "That's all for now. Well, order whatever we want later. We want a private room. The type that children like." When it was renovated, there were many types of private rooms. Gu Yundong did not know which one was still empty, so she could only ask the waiter. The girl's hand under the counter gently tugged, then nodded with a smile. "All right, I'll get someone to bring the guest to the private room." The girl first noted down what they had ordered. Then, she found another young round-faced girl, and led them inside. Before Gu Yundong left, she asked, "By the way, where's Su Qing? I saw her yesterday when I came." Su Qing happened to be resting today, so she didn't come. Gu Yundong nodded and left. As soon as she left, she disappeared behind the door. The girl at the counter suddenly crumpled the paper in her hand into a ball, and threw it on the ground. What kind of person is she? She's really shameless. She's so annoying. Another slightly older girl happened to walk behind the counter. When she saw this, she could not help but ask, "What happened? Who made you angry and threw the order away?" As he spoke, he squatted down and picked up the paper. He placed it on the table and smoothed it out. However, the ink on it had completely smudged the words. It was impossible to see what the customer had ordered. The girl could not help but frown. "Xiaoyi, what does it say? What do you care what she wrote?" "Huh." The lady frowned even more badly. "What's going on? This customer offended you and made you have such an attitude? This won't do. The boss has said that anyone who comes is a guest and has to be treated well." "Aya, Sister Lan, you don't understand at all?" Xiaoyi snorted. "What kind of guests are they? What's going on?" Xiaoyi glared at her fiercely. "You don't know, but that woman came yesterday too. Before noon, she came to the shop and ordered 2 cups of milk tea. One was hers, and the other was her maid's. Then, the 2 of them sat in that corner of the hall for the entire afternoon. They didn't move at all." The more Xiaoyi spoke, the angrier she became. "Look at those young ladies and madams who came to our place. Which one of them would sit at the same table as a maidservant and drink tea? Only those ignorant and dilapidated families are so impolite." Wei Lan felt that this was wrong. "Xiaoyi, there's no rule in our shop that you can't sit with a maidservant. What do you know?" When Xiaoyi saw her retort, her tone could not help but become heavier. "There's something even worse. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 837, 3 Bosses. A customer looked over, and Wei Lan quickly pulled her back. "Be quiet." Xiaoyi shrunk her head and continued. "It's fine if they sit in this shop for half a day, but the problem is that they keep stealing glances at others. Learning how to eat and drink elegantly from those madams and young ladies. I feel that it's shabby. Sister Lan, it's not that I want to criticize them, but if the other madams and young ladies find out, they will lose their temper and find trouble with our shop. If Gu Yundong were here to hear this, she would definitely shout that she was wronged. She just wanted to know how satisfied the customers were with the shop, and see if they liked the food. Moreover, she had really only taken a few glances. Who knew that this Xiaoyi would actually discover it? Wei Lan felt that Xiaoyi's words were all guesses. "It can't be. Did you misunderstand? I saw it with my own eyes. How could I have misunderstood? Just watch. They came yesterday and tasted the sweetness. Today they came again. They even brought their families. If they come at this hour, they will definitely sit for the entire afternoon. Oh right, there's another thing. Su Qing was the one who entertained them yesterday. You didn't see her. She was so attentive. When she saw that the woman had finished her milk tea, she immediately went over to refill it. I think she likes to serve such poor guests." The more she spoke, the more she went overboard. Wei Lan couldn't stand it anymore, so she interrupted her and said, "You'd better tell me what's written on this list first. I'll get someone to do it so that the guests won't wait." "I've said so much, but you didn't listen at all." Xiaoyi stomped her feet. Wei Lan handed the paper forward. Xiaoyi was furious. Milk tea, double skim milk, fries, chicken nuggets, and a pot of osmanthus tea and a plate of osmanthus cake. They're all gone. Wei Lan nodded and wrote again on the paper. Seeing this, Xiaoyi rolled her eyes. "I told you for nothing. It's really boring." Her tone was really not good. Wei Lan pursed her lips, feeling a little dissatisfied. She was Nie Shuang's woman, and Xiaoyi was Madame De's woman. In the beginning, everyone was the same and got along well with each other. After all, the 2 bosses had repeatedly instructed them to get along harmoniously, and not to fight among themselves. Therefore, the girls in the shop were quite friendly. After all, they were all carefully selected. At least, they did their best to treat the customers. But as time passed, conflicts arose. Among the 3 owners, Gu Yundong had never appeared, even though Nie Shuang and Madame Dai seemed to think highly of her. However, everyone still knew that this boss did not have much power. In addition, they did not know her, so they did not know her personality. Naturally, in everyone's hearts, she was not as prestigious as the other 2 bosses. Moreover, Nie Shuang and Madame Dai had brought many people with them. Boss Gu only had Su Qing. Su Qing's family background was not particularly good. Therefore, gradually, the shop was divided into several factions. In the beginning, Wei Lan thought that Su Qing was alone and would probably be ostracized by everyone. She did not expect her to be so popular, especially with the few old women in the kitchen. Therefore, even though she seemed to be alone, the people in the shop did not become enemies with her. Everyone seemed to be harmonious with her. During this period of time, everyone's mental state had more or less changed. As for Xiaoyi, she had the biggest change in temperament here, because she felt that she belonged to Madame Dai and was superior to others. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 838. She said thank you. Wei Lan did not like her very much, but she did not dare to offend her. The balance between the three bosses was very important. If she broke this balance, she would probably not be able to stay here anymore. Sighing inwardly, Wei Lan brought the menu to the kitchen and got someone to quickly prepare the food. When it was done, she personally carried the tray over. The round-faced girl arranged for Gu Yundong, and the rest to be in a private room with a carpet and toys. Gu Yundong regretted it the moment she entered. This place was suitable for Kiki to come over at her age. The two kids were a little old after going to school. Just as she thought this, she saw Yunshu and Yuanzhi go in happily. Then they started playing with the puzzles. I've solved the puzzles several times. Then why are you still playing? I want to challenge speed. I want to see how quickly I can solve it. Last time, I saw that the headmaster did it in less than 5 minutes. I want to be faster than him so that I can go to the headmaster and show off. Gu Yundong. Your aspirations are really too great. This private room is not bad. After the round-faced girl left, eldest Aunt Gu felt much more at ease. She looked around the private room and seemed to like it very much. Especially when she saw the two children playing on the carpet. She was even more satisfied. Gu Yundong and her sat on the sofa at the side. This is just one type of the sofas. When this place closes, it'll bring eldest aunt to check all the private rooms. Why would I need it? Of course. After all, I haven't seen all of them yet. Eldest Aunt Gu smiled and pointed at her. So you want to go yourself? The two children who were playing over there also heard it. We want to go too. You're going back to the county in a few days. There's no chance. Yunshu quickly stood up. Then there's no time like the present. Let's do it today. Let's wait here until closing time, and then look at every room. You're really impulsive. Let me think. It was mainly because Su Qing happened to be resting today and the others in the shop did not know her. They had seen the old women in the kitchen. After all, she was the one who taught them how to make milk tea. It just wasn't convenient. Moreover, the shop closed relatively late. They didn't tell their family when they came out today, and their family might be worried. Just as she was thinking about it, there was a knock on the door of the private room. Gu Yundong looked up. Come in. Wei Lan opened the door and walked in with a tray. She smiled and placed the things on the table. Then she said, this is the milk tea, osmanthus tea, and osmanthus cake that the customer ordered. As for double skim milk and the other two snacks, please wait a moment. Thank you. Gu Yundong smiled and nodded at her. Wei Lan left the room and paused for a moment before turning to look at the closed door. There were really too few madams and young ladies who said thank you. They were used to being served by the people around them, and had already taken it for granted. This girl. Her smile was beautiful, and her voice was pleasant. Especially when she thanked her, it actually made her feel like her work had been acknowledged. Wei Lan felt that this girl was not like what Xiaoyi had said at all. She wasn't from a dilapidated family who did not know etiquette, and only knew how to imitate others. She even had an aura that was stronger than Wei Lan's young lady. Wei Lan walked back to the counter, and Xiaoyi came over again. How is it? I told you, they're in the private room. Are they looking around like they've never seen the world? Chapter 839. Demanding a beating. Wei Lan was a little annoyed. Was there no end to this? She was just a guest. Why did she have such a big opinion? She had never had an unhappy conflict with her, right? I'm asking you a question. Answer me. Qiuyue tugged at her. Wei Lan secretly took a deep breath and quietly pulled back her sleeve. She said calmly, "No, be it that girl or the others, they're all quite easy to get along with. They're very polite." "I don't believe you. It must be because they're in the room. You couldn't tell." "If you don't believe me, why are you asking me?" Wei Lan was not willing to continue chatting with her. She carried the tray and turned around. "I'm going to get busy. There are guests outside again. Hurry up and entertain them." Qiuyue turned her head and saw a familiar young lady walking in. A smile suddenly appeared on her face and she hurriedly went up to her. Wei Lan shook her head and went to the kitchen to bring the other snacks from Gu Yundong's room. When she walked into the room, she saw her picking up the teapot and pouring tea for Gu Dafeng. Wei Lan took another look. She was indeed not as elegant, slow, and dignified as the young ladies of other rich families. She looked very casual. "Miss, here are your tea and snacks. Please enjoy." Gu Yundong thanked her again. When she was arranging them, he asked casually, "What's your name?" "Miss, my name is Wei Lan." "Wei Lan." Gu Yundong murmured softly and continued to ask, "How does it feel to be a shop assistant here?" Yesterday, she came over to check on the guests' reactions. Today, she wanted to understand the thoughts of the staff working here. Wei Lan stopped what she was doing and looked up with a smile. "Of course it's good. Our new tea pavilion is the only shop in the entire Xuanhe prefecture that only sells milk tea to female customers. I'm very happy to be able to work here. Others are envious of me for becoming a female employee of new tea pavilion." "Is that so?" Gu Yundong smiled and did not ask further. She turned around and called out to the two people who were still working hard to solve the puzzles. "Everything is here. Hurry up and wash your hands. Otherwise it will get cold later." Gu Yunshu had just finished the last puzzle, but it had been a long time and he felt a little defeated. Yuanzhi patted him on the shoulder. "It's okay. Let's work harder. You have to think like this. The teacher is so many years older than you. When you reach the age of the teacher, you will definitely be able to solve it faster than him." Gu Yunshu was instantly comforted. His eyes lit up as he said, "That's right. The teacher is already so old. His hands are much older than mine." Then he shook his chubby hand. He had been eating a little too much recently, and his hand was no longer flexible. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. "In your eyes, are all people over the age of 10 old? This brat really deserved a beating. He was not cute." She urged him. "Aren't you going?" "I'll go now." The two of them hurriedly stood up. Wei Lan quickly said, "I'll bring the two young masters over." Most of the guests in this house were guests who brought their children over. They were afraid that the children would overturn the basins when they ran, so the basins were not placed inside. Wei Lan opened the door and led Gu Yunshu and Yuanzhi out. There was a washroom in the courtyard. Gu Yunshu walked on the steps and wanted to wash himself, but Wei Lan had already taken a wet handkerchief to wipe his hands. Gu Yunshu was still a little embarrassed, so he stood there obediently. When he was done wiping his hands, he said, "Sister, when will new tea pavilion close?" Chapter 840. Brainwashed by Gu Yunshu. Wei Lan was stunned for a moment. "Little master, why are you asking this?" She had already wiped Yunshu's hands. She got up and wrung the towel because she wiped Yuanzhi. "We want to take a look at the other rooms after closing when there are no customers." As soon as he finished speaking, Yuanzhi said, "Cousin said that she wanted to consider it, but she didn't agree." Gu Yunshu snorted. "I will definitely convince her. My sister likes me very much. She won't have the heart to reject me." "Ha ha ha, you're praising yourself. Yunshu, you're getting more and more shameless. If you mock me again, I'll draw a turtle on your face later." Thick-skinned, hee hee hee. Gu Yunshu pretended to cover his mouth. Yuanzhi quickly dodged to the side and said to Wei Lan, "Sister, we'll go back to the room first." Then he ran. Gu Yunshu hurriedly chased after him. The two of them quickly entered the private room. Wei Lan stood on the spot and watched as their little figures gradually disappear. The corners of her mouth pursed slightly. Puffed. A familiar sneer suddenly came from the side. Wei Lan turned around and saw Qiuyue leaning against the pillar under the corridor. She had an expression that said, "Am I right?" She slowly walked in front of Wei Lan and pointed at the door of the room. You didn't believe me when I told you, but did you hear him now? They're going to stay until closing time, and then check all our private rooms. Wei Lan didn't say anything this time. Qiuyue became even more smug. They treat this place as their own backyard. They can visit whenever they want. Who agreed? Why don't they take a look at themselves? Those esteemed guests wanted to visit, but our madam didn't agree. Just them? How prestigious. Wei Lan thought of Gu Yundong's expression of gratitude and felt that she was not the kind of guest who would make unreasonable requests. Hence he still defended her. Just now it was just the thoughts of the two young masters. You heard it too. That girl didn't agree. But she said she'd think about it. She didn't say no. Perhaps it's to appease the little masters. Qiuyue snorted. You're really stubborn. All right, let's see if they'll stay until closing time. Let me tell you first, I won't be polite to such rude guests who make excessive requests. Our shop is backed by the wife of the prefecture magistrate. There's no need to give anyone face in the entire Xuanhe prefecture. After saying that, she turned around and left. Qiuyue. Wei Lan chased after her for a few steps before stopping. She turned her head and looked in the direction of the room. After a while, she returned to the hall. Meanwhile, in the room, Gu Yundong was brainwashing Gu Yunshu. Sister, don't you often say that we have to catch them off guard? Think about it. If you suddenly say that you want to inspect the shop and check all the rooms today, everyone won't have time to prepare. What you see will be the true appearance of the rooms, right? I heard a story from our teacher. He said that an emperor from the previous dynasty wanted to experience the suffering of the common people, but every time, he would mobilize a large number of people and tell everyone in advance. Then everyone would know where the emperor went, so everything was prepared in advance. When the emperor left the palace, he would see the common people singing and dancing. The common people would eat their fill and wear warm clothes with a satisfied smile on their faces. Guess what happened in the end? Gu Yunshu deliberately kept her in suspense. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 841. Ask Eldest Aunt. Gu Yundong resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Of course, she knew that this kind of story was too common. However, when she saw that her eldest aunt was listening with interest, she did not interrupt and even asked, "What happened in the end?" Gu Yunshu picked up a fry with his chopsticks and ate it. He took a sip of milk tea and lowered his voice mysteriously. After that, the previous dynasty was destroyed. This causal relationship had changed too quickly. Eldest Aunt Gu didn't understand. She looked shocked and asked, "Why?" Sigh, because what the emperor saw when he went to the common people was what others let him see. He didn't know what the common people's true lives were like. He felt that everyone was living well. There were no corrupt officials in the royal court, and the common people were well fed. Then as the emperor, he didn't need to do much. He no longer worked hard to rule, no longer cared about the officials who were rich. He even increased the taxes and taxes. He wanted people to build a summer residence for him, wasting the people's money and forcing the common people to have no way out. Eldest Aunt Gu was enlightened. She nodded and said, "I think your teacher's story is quite good. We commoners have a hard time." "Isn't that so?" Gu Yunshu immediately nodded fiercely. Then he was stunned. No, that was not what he wanted to say. He looked at Gu Yundong and realized that there was no other change in her expression. He quickly changed the topic. "Eldest sister, look. We have to see the bigger picture from the small. No, the smaller picture from the big. Although new Tea Pavilion is small compared to the previous dynasty, the logic is the same, right? You suddenly did this when no one was on guard." Gu Yundong saw that his mouth was about to dry up and handed him a milk teacup. "All right, I understand. I'll get Lu Xiong to go back and tell father that we won't be coming back for dinner tonight." Gu Yunshu's eyes lit up. "Eldest sister, you're the best." Gu Yundong tapped his head and said to Eldest Aunt Gu, "I'm going out for a while." It was not suitable for men to enter new Tea Pavilion, so Gu Yundong asked Lu Xiong, who had driven over, to rest at the tea stall beside him. The business of this tea stall was very good now. There were especially many coachmen like Lu Xiong who sent Miss and Madam to New Tea Pavilion. Yundong returned after instructing Lu Xiong. However, when she passed by the counter, she felt an unfriendly gaze. She turned her head to look, and the other party immediately put on a smile. Yundong raised her eyebrows. This seemed to be the person who had ordered for them previously. She lowered her eyes and suddenly smiled. Yunshu, that brat, had a point. Qiuyue maintained her smile. After Yundong left, she snorted. She would wait for 2 hours to see if this stranger would leave. If the stranger did not leave, she would have to ask her to leave. Yundong returned to the room, and saw Yunshu showing off to Yuanzhi. I told you that my elder sister dotes on me the most. Look, I just told her a story and she agreed. It made the other stories I prepared useless. Yundong could not help but knock him on the head. On the other hand, eldest Aunt Gu could not help but ask, "You've been here all afternoon. Will it delay your work?" She knew that Yundong was very busy now. There were many things to do in the shop and workshop. "I won't delay. I can take this opportunity to rest." In fact, when she went out just now, she was still wondering if she should take down the brush and paper from the carriage to take a look. However, she instantly dismissed this thought. "I happen to have something to ask you. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 842. Chasing Yundong away. "What is it?" Eldest Aunt Gu asked. "Eat first. We can talk slowly." Yundong brought her a piece of osmanthus cake. Eldest Aunt Gu had a small bite and chewed carefully. In the past, she had bought a few pieces of osmanthus cake in the county city, but they were not as delicious as the ones here. After taking another sip of osmanthus tea, she felt as if her entire life was satisfied. "Eldest Aunt, what are your plans for the future?" Yundong asked softly when she saw that she had finished a whole piece. When Eldest Aunt Gu saw that she was asking about this, she immediately smiled. "Your uncle and I have already discussed this. Didn't Mrs. Ren say that your uncle's wooden carvings were selling quite well last time? I'll sell them. Although your uncle's legs are not good, his carving skills are getting better and better. Even if the little things aren't worth much, I can still earn a lot of money when there are more of them." Yundong nodded. Eldest uncle had a skill that was already much better than many people. For now, he would make small wooden carvings. When his legs were better in the future, he could also make big ones. "Then have you thought of where to sell them?" Eldest Aunt Gu shook her head. "I want to bring some to the market tomorrow and set up a stall on the ground to see how business is." Yundong thought for a while. "I know a market not far from Gus. It sells flowers, birds, calligraphy, paintings, and so on. The environment is not bad. Aunt, you can go there and take a look first." The small wooden carvings were also a work of art. There should be a market there. Eldest Aunt Gus' eyes lit up. Really? At first, she thought of finding a random place at the entrance of the market. In the past, when she was in Yongning Prefecture, there was no market in the county city to sell flowers and birds. Perhaps she couldn't come into contact with it, so she didn't know. Yes, the flowers in my mother's courtyard were bought at that market. The mother and daughter who sell flowers should still be there. The little girl's name is Xiaoyuan. If eldest aunt encounters her, you can accompany each other. They're quite good people. Eldest Aunt Gu was even happier. She hadn't even gone to the market, but she already had a companion. If there was anything she didn't understand, she could ask them. In the end, she had never walked around the prefectural city here. She was more or less worried, afraid that she would not be able to speak to the people in the prefectural city. Yundong asked her about the price again. The price that eldest Aunt Gu and her husband set was really too low. This was the prefectural city, so they could still raise the price. Moreover, although Bianhan's craftsmanship was not as good as a grandmaster's, he was serious and meticulous. Every small wooden carving was done diligently, and the quality was definitely not a problem. Eldest Aunt Gu was actually not good at doing business, but she would ask. As Yundong chatted with her, she slowly felt that she had become much more straightforward. As expected, eldest Aunt Gu was still the same eldest Aunt Gu as before. Knock knock. Just as the two of them were deep in conversation, there was a knock on the door. Gu Yundong's voice stopped abruptly. He frowned slightly and looked in the direction of the private room's door. Gu Yunshu had already rushed over to open the door. He was stunned when he saw Xiaoyi standing in front of him. "May I ask what's the matter?" Xiaoyi still had a smile on her face and her attitude was still polite. She stood at the door and looked at Gu Yundong. "Miss, it's already 3 p.m. 3 p.m.? So what?" "All right, I understand." Gu Yundong smiled and nodded gently. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 843 Fight. Xiaoyi saw that she was pretending to be stupid and did not know what was good for her, so she simply made it clear. "Miss, it's like this. Ever since our new Tea Pavilion opened for business, there have been many customers every day. Whether it's the hall or the room, it's filled with people. Especially after noon, some customers still have to wait for seats." Gu Yundong frowned, but Xiaoyi continued to smile and said, "It's the most crowded time now, so there's no room. A madam had tea and snacks in this room last time, and was very satisfied. Today, she came over and asked us for this room again." Gu Yundong looked at her with a faint smile. How strange. There was actually someone who chased away guests. Gu Yunshu scratched his head and looked up at Xiaoyi. "Didn't you tell that madam that there are already guests in this room?" Xiaoyi lowered her head to look at him, then continued to look at Gu Yundong and said, "Miss, look, you've been here for nearly 4 hours. Gu Yunshu was enlightened and could not help but widen his eyes. "So you want to chase us away?" He quickly turned around and walked to Gu Yundong's side. "Eldest sister, she is a bad person." Xiaoyi was so angry that she almost fell backward. This stinky child. Gu Yundong saw that she could not maintain the smile on her face and finally said, "But we haven't finished eating." She had been talking to eldest Aunt Gu just now and only eaten 2 pieces of osmanthus cake on the table. Gu Yunshu had finished his fries, but Yuanzhi's chicken nuggets were still there. He wanted to eat them later. Xiaoyi also saw the table in front of them, and felt even more contempt in her heart. She did not expect them to eat so slowly just to stay here until closing time. She had really learned something. "You can take the food back." As soon as she said this, Wei Lan ran over while panting. She pulled Xiaoyi out. "Do you know what you're doing? Is this how you treat guests?" Then, she bowed apologetically to Gu Yundong. "Miss, I'm sorry. There were too many things to do. She was too busy. I'm really sorry." Wei Lan did not expect that Xiaoyi would really come here to chase away guests when she only went to the toilet. From the first day they came here as workers, Madame Dai and Miss Nia had emphasized that they were not allowed to be rude to guests or chase them away. They tried their best to satisfy the customers' needs. If they made rude requests, they had to reject them tactfully. Only those who were really unreasonable would be chased out and not be allowed to step into new Tea Pavilion from now on. However, this girl had never done anything out of line. She had brought 2 young children with her, but they did not cause a commotion to affect the other guests. It would be unreasonable for Xiaoyi to chase them away like this. She lowered her voice and warned her. "Don't go overboard. It won't do you any good to offend the guests. What's there to be afraid of? We have Madame Dai." At this moment, Gu Yundong had already stood up and was walking towards the door when she heard this. Therefore this person was with Madame Dai. As expected, the conflict still emerged. Xiaoyi refused to leave. Wei Lan tried to pull her a few times, but to no avail. At this moment, a scream suddenly came from the hall in front. Following that, the round-faced girl from before ran over and called Wei Lan and Xiaoyi. "Sister Lan, Sister Xiaoyi, bad news. Someone is fighting in front." "What?" Wei Lan and Xiaoyi were shocked. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 844 Inquiry. Wei Lan immediately ran to the front hall. Xiaoyi paused for a moment and turned to look at Gu Yundong. She quickly followed the round-faced girl. Gu Yundong stood where she was and was silent for a moment. Then she said to eldest Aunt Gu, who was standing behind him, "Aunt, rest here first. I'll go over and take a look." "I'll go with you." "No, we'll be right back." With that, Gu Yundong strode towards the main hall. Just as she turned around the large screen in the hall, she heard a commotion. There were many people in the hall. Some of them had already stood up and retreated to the side to watch the commotion. Yundong glanced at them. These people were very interesting. They were still holding cups and snacks in their hands, as if they were afraid that they would lose the food. The troublemakers should be two rich wives. They were very young and looked to be less than 20 years old. At this moment, neither of them allowed the other to look at each other. It was an exaggeration to say that they were fighting. They should have quarreled. There was a broken cup on the ground. Wei Lan and Xiaoyi were persuading the two of them, but they didn't listen at all. Yundong took a few steps forward and walked to the anxious round-faced girl. She asked in a low voice, "What's going on? Which families are these two madams from?" The round-faced girl was stunned for a moment. When she turned around and saw that it was her, she only smiled slightly but did not answer. This was a private matter of a guest. How could she gossip in front of other guests, especially at such a time? But just because she didn't gossip didn't mean that others wouldn't do it. A girl standing on Yundong's right immediately told her excitedly, "You don't know, do you? Let me tell you, the one on the left is Mrs. Yu from the east of the city. Her family runs a cloth shop. The one on the right is also from the east of the city. Her surname is Tian, and her family is in the wine business." Yundong turned her head slightly and saw the girl's excited face. She held a cup of milk tea in her left hand and a loaf of bread in her right. Her eyes were shining as she stared at the two quarreling people, as if she was looking forward to them fighting. The round-faced girl also glanced at her. Perhaps because of her status, she did not say anything. On the other hand, the girl happily shared the gossip with Yundong. It said that Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian had a good relationship when they were young, but later on, they became worse and worse. They hated each other. If any family invited them to a birthday banquet, as long as one of them went, the other would definitely say that they were sick and would not go. Unless they had to, they would not see each other no matter what. You know them quite well. Yundong could not help but want to laugh. The girl was still a little proud. That's right. I don't have any good points, but I know a lot of things in this prefecture. Yundong was speechless. This girl was an informant. "Miss, what's your name?" "My last name is Bao." "You're really inquisitive. You didn't let this surname down at all." Yundong was speechless. Miss Bao continued, "Only this new tea pavilion has delicious food and comfortable places. This milk tea is even more novel. It made these two madams who don't like each other come over every day. They were fine before, but I didn't expect them to fight today." As Miss Bao spoke, she shook her head. "Is it because Madame Dai and Xiong are not around that they've become bolder?" When Yundong heard her mention Xiong's name, she could not help but glance at her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 845, My Surname Is Gu. So, why did they quarrel? Miss Bao pointed at Mrs. Yu and said, "Although these two people don't mind appearing in new Tea Pavilion at the same time, Mrs. Yu used to sit on the second floor. Today, she sat on the first floor. Moreover, she sat in the seat that Mrs. Tian usually sits in." Yundong's mouth twitched. So they were arguing? Miss Bao seemed to have seen through her thoughts, so she nodded. "Although it's a small matter, haven't they been resentful for a long time? Wouldn't they start arguing with a reason?" She even dropped the cup. These two families were both merchants, and they were just ordinary merchants. They did not pay much attention to the rules, and they were both married. Therefore, they could quarrel in such a place. If they were like the Nye family, they wouldn't dare to quarrel with others in public. Even if they got married, they would be criticized. Miss Bao took another sip of milk tea and enjoyed being a bystander. In the end, she suddenly remembered and turned to ask Yundong, "By the way, I still don't know your name. I've never seen you before." Yundong laughed. "Didn't you say that you know everything about Xuanhe Prefecture?" That was not cute. Wouldn't she have to inquire about it before she knew everything? "My surname is Gu." With that, Yundong walked towards the two people who were still arguing. Miss Bao frowned and pondered. Gu. Which family was she from? She had no impression of her at all. Just as she was about to ask more carefully, she looked up and saw that Yundong had actually gone between the two of them. She was so shocked that she almost lost grip of her milk teacup. What was she doing in their midst? Couldn't she just watch from the side? She was not the only one. Qiuyue, who was standing in front, was also stunned when she saw her coming over. However, she quickly reached out to hold her back. "What are you doing here? It's already messy enough here." Yundong pulled her arm back. Qiuyue staggered and almost lost her balance. On the other side, Weilan did not notice that she was raising her voice and saying to the two of them, "Mrs. Yu, Mrs. Tian, calm down first. Let's talk slowly." "I can't talk slowly. She was the one who threw the cup at me. She clearly wanted to murder me." "You're really shameless. Who wants to harm you? You were the one who came to find trouble with me first. You took my place first." "Your place? What a joke. Do you own this new tea pavilion? Did you buy this seat? It was originally reserved for whoever arrived first. You're amazing. You even want others to specially save it for you. You usually sit on the second floor, but today, you chose to sit on the first floor and even occupied this seat. You're clearly provoking me on purpose." The two of them argued more and more fiercely, neither giving in to the other. Yundong had a smile on her face. She stopped behind Weilan and patted her shoulder. Weilan's mouth was dry, but the two of them ignored her and continued to argue as they got closer and closer. If they were not careful, their fingernails would have scratched each other. Weilan immediately turned around when she was patted on the shoulder. She was even more surprised to see Yundong walking over. "Go to the kitchen and find two strong old women," Yundong said. Weilan was stunned for a moment before she smiled bitterly. "Miss, go back to the private room. I'll give you an explanation when I'm done." She thought that Yundong was still angry about what happened before. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 846. She's Boss Gu? However, Yundong said, "Weilan, my name is Yundong. I think Madame Dai and Nie Shuang have mentioned my name before." Weilan's eyes widened. Yundong? Wasn't that the name of the third boss of their new tea pavilion? She was actually the Gu family's boss. Weilan was suspicious for a moment, but on second thought, there were very few people who knew that one of the new Ming pavilion's bosses was Gu. There was no need for this person to lie to her now. Besides, the old women in the kitchen had all said that they had seen Boss Gu. If she wasn't, she would immediately be exposed. Thinking of this, Weilan hurriedly nodded and quickly ran in the direction of the kitchen. On the other side, Qiuyue had just stabilized herself. When she saw her, she wanted to go forward and criticize Yundong. Unexpectedly, Weilan did not see her at all. Instead, she bumped into her as she ran, causing Qiuyue to take a few steps back. She pressed her hands against the edge of the table and barely managed to stand. She was instantly furious. She swung her painful fingers and said angrily, "Weilan, what's wrong with you?" Hiss. Weilan returned very quickly with two old women behind her. Two old women squeezed into the crowd. When they saw Yundong, their eyes lit up. "Boss Gu." When Weilan heard this, she finally believed it completely. Her eyes were filled with excitement as she hurriedly greeted respectfully, "Boss Gu." She really did not expect that the rumored mysterious Boss Gu would actually appear in front of her. She even thanked her. For some reason, Weilan's face was a little hot. Thinking about what she had done today, she didn't seem to have done anything rude, right? As for Qiuyue, forget it, let's not think about it anymore. These were not things she should worry about. Boss Gu definitely knew. The most important thing now was to quiet down the two arguing madams. The new tea pavilion had already become a place to watch the commotion. Afraid that Yundong did not know their identities, Weilan quickly went forward and planned to explain to her in advance. But Yundong had already reached out and instructed the two old women to pull Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian away. Since the boss had given the order, the two old women naturally had nothing to hesitate about. They immediately hugged the two quarreling customers, who were about to attack, and dragged them back. Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian were stunned. They did not expect someone to dare to attack them. They turned around and realized that it was an unfamiliar old woman. They immediately stopped arguing and struggled slightly. What are you doing? Who are you? Let go of me. Let go. Only then did Yundong step forward. Her voice suddenly rose as he called out to the left, Mrs. Yu. Mrs. Yu was shocked and subconsciously stopped talking to look at her. Yundong raised her voice to the right. Mrs. Tian. Mrs. Tian also looked at her. The two of them were finally not as noisy as before. The entire hall fell silent because of Yundong's voice. Xiaoyi's fingers no longer hurt. When she looked up, she realized that Yundong was in control of the situation in front of her. She was instantly dissatisfied. She was standing far away just now and the two madams were arguing fiercely, so she did not hear the two old women call Yundong boss. At this moment, they saw that this strange person was actually bossing around in her shop. She was too shameless. The two old women from the kitchen were even listening to her. Had they forgotten who was the master? Xiaoyi wanted to step forward, but Yundong was already smiling at the two madams. Mrs. Yu, Mrs. Tian, are you dissatisfied with our new Tea Pavilion? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 847. She wants to subdue people with virtue. As soon as he said this, the two of them, who had wanted to speak, immediately choked. Yundong was still smiling. In fact, she really wanted to get someone to take them out. How much business had their troubles delayed the shop? It would be easy to take them out. But she couldn't. She ran a shop. There were so many people watching here. How could she use violence? If she gave people the impression that her shop was fierce and would chase customers out when things didn't go their way, others wouldn't dare to come. Therefore, she wanted to convince people with virtue. She asked again, do you have any dissatisfaction with our new Tea Pavilion? Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian suddenly came back to their senses and hurriedly shook their heads. No, we are not dissatisfied with the new Tea Pavilion. We are just dissatisfied with her. Who would dare to be dissatisfied with the new Tea Pavilion? However, they were indeed arguing and fighting in new Tea Pavilion. The two of them suddenly reacted and instantly broke out in cold sweat. Yundong continued to smile. Oh, they had a tacit understanding. Even their words were the same. Since you don't have any dissatisfaction, why don't you calm down and talk about it slowly? Arguing hurts the mind. If you get angry too much, it's easy to get old. You two ladies are both young, beautiful, and outstanding. It's not worth getting angry over such a small matter, right? Just treat it as giving face to new Tea Pavilion. Sit down and talk slowly, okay? Yundong gave them a way out, and the two of them left. Now that they had woken up, they finally understood where they were. This was Madame Dea's place. A family like theirs did not dare to cause trouble. Therefore, although she still looked angry, she did not argue anymore. Seeing this, Yundong turned to Wei Lan and said, bring the two madams to the room and serve 2 cups of osmanthus tea to calm down. It was naturally not appropriate to solve the problem in front of everyone. Yes. Wei Lan secretly heaved a sigh of relief, and quickly led the two of them to the side room. The two old women also let go. Only then did Yundong say to the remaining people, we've disturbed everyone today. Please forgive me. In order to apologize to everyone, I got someone to prepare some trinkets, and let everyone bring them back later. Don't stop coming again because of such a small matter. She spoke eloquently and promised to give him something. Although it might not be worth much, this attitude made people feel very comfortable. Not to mention that they didn't dare to really blame new Tea Pavilion, but they had come over to drink tea and rest when they were disturbed. Their good mood was gone, so they naturally had a grudge. What's more, there was no lack of madams with husbands or sons in high positions present. They did not have to give Madame Dai face. They only pursued this quiet and comfortable environment. Yundong's words really made the madams who were about to leave stop. To be honest, the refreshments here were really delicious and novel. They didn't know what the trinkets were, but they were actually looking forward to it. Yundong asked the round-faced girl to clean up the place first before she excused herself and left. As soon as she left, the people in the hall suddenly reacted. This girl. Who was she? Was she a new employee in this shop? But her clothes didn't look like it. On the other hand, Qiuyue was stunned for a moment before she hurriedly caught up with Yundong. Stop right there. Who are you? Who asked you to be in charge of our shop? You even gave us trinkets. You're really... Yundong turned her head abruptly and scanned her face with her sharp and cold gaze. Shut up. I'll settle the score with you later. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 848. Listen to me. Qiuyue was stunned by her cold gaze and stood rooted to the ground. She had only dared to speak ill of others behind their backs. Even if she chased the guests away, it was only because her heart was too arrogant for a moment. It was her first time doing it. Now that Yundong was looking at her, she felt inexplicably flustered. Yundong had already walked into the room. As expected, Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Yu sat on two sides and did not speak to each other. Wei Lan persuaded them softly and poured them tea. When they saw Yundong enter, they immediately turned their heads away. Just now, Wei Lan had already said that this person was the owner of New Tea Pavilion. They had met Madame Dai and Xiong before. This was indeed the first time they had seen this boss Gu, who was rumored to not even have come on the day of the opening. Yundong sat down in front of the two of them and smiled. All right, there's no one else here. You can tell me what happened. Mrs. Tian was the first to speak. Boss Gu, I'm not an unreasonable person. No one wants to cause trouble for New Tea Pavilion. It's just that Mrs. Yu is too much. Not only did she occupy my position, but she also mocked me. Her words are too unpleasant. Mrs. Yu sneered. What an interesting thing to say. That seat isn't yours. If you hadn't come to find trouble with me first, I wouldn't have bothered with you. But you're usually on the second floor. You're clearly... Seeing that the two of them were about to quarrel again, Yundong waved her hand. Stop. Since both of you think that you have a point, why don't you listen to me? The two of them closed their mouths. Yundong smiled and said, Mrs. Tian, every seat in New Tea Pavilion is prepared for all the guests. There is indeed no specific seat for anyone. Of course, I can understand that you come often and are already used to that seat. But Mrs. Tian, have you ever thought that you can change to another place and see other scenery? The second floor is not bad, and the rooms at the back are not bad either. You might not know this, but not to mention the second floor. Even those rooms have their own scenery. If we change to a different one every day, when others ask about New Tea Pavilion later, Mrs. Tian will have something to say. Perhaps others will envy you, right? Mrs. Tian was a little unhappy when she heard her say that she was in the wrong. The last sentence stunned her for a moment. A thought flashed through her mind. That's right, not many people came to New Tea Pavilion. She could come every day because her husband held power, and her dowry was generous. The other sisters-in-law and concubines in the family, and even her mother-in-law, had only come twice. In the future, when the family asked, her mother-in-law would tell them how spacious and novel the hall was, how sweet and delicious the milk tea was, and how delicious and fresh the snacks were. After she finished speaking, no one would ask Mrs. Tian anymore. If she went through all the places in New Tea Pavilion, wouldn't she be surrounded like a star? In the end, she was just being vain. Seeing that she did not speak, Yundong smiled and turned to look at another person. Mrs. Yu, why aren't you sitting on the second floor today? Mrs. Yu was stunned. Actually, she had been thinking about Yundong's words just now. They seemed to make sense. Hearing her question, she glanced at Mrs. Tian and said, I was originally on the second floor, but there was someone I didn't like on the second floor today, so I came downstairs. There were many people downstairs at that time. It seems that that place is not bad. Who knew that Mrs. Tian often sat there? She usually came early and went straight to the second floor. The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. There are so many people who don't get along with you. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 849. It's over. Yundong nodded, indicating that she understood. Then she asked, Have you never said this to Mrs. Tian? What's there to say? Am I very familiar with her? I can't even be bothered to look at her. She walked in front of me perfectly fine, and even blocked my light. Mrs. Yu rolled her eyes, as if Mrs. Tian was a dirty thing. With this gaze, even ordinary people would feel unhappy, let alone Mrs. Tian, who had a grudge against her. Mrs. Tian's anger was instantly ignited again. You can't be bothered to look at me? Then I walked in front of you and you mocked me? If your words weren't so unpleasant, would I have quarreled with you? You were clearly the one who provoked me first. Seeing that they were about to argue again, Yundong said, Look, this is actually a very small matter. Mrs. Yu, don't say too much. If Mrs. Tian takes 2 steps, such a thing won't happen at all. What's the big deal? If I don't have a seat, they'll change it. If the 2 of them don't get along, they won't talk at most, right? I know you were impulsive, but if you quarrel in front of so many madams and young ladies, I'm afraid the entire Xuanhe prefecture will be in an uproar in less than half a day. It's not worth it to implicate your reputation and your family's reputation because of such a small matter. The 2 of them stopped talking. Actually, they had calmed down and knew that they had done something wrong just now. Even if they wanted to quarrel, they could not quarrel in New Tea Pavilion. Although their family was only an ordinary rich family, it was really embarrassing for them to scold each other in public like a shrew in the market. They would probably not be able to answer to their husband and mother-in-law when they returned. The 2 of them thought it through and felt that what Yundong said made sense. Seeing that the 2 of them had calmed down, Yundong smiled and said, Can we just let this matter go? It's not easy for our new tea pavilion that has just opened for business. Take it as giving new tea pavilion face. I'll get someone to offer you some trinkets later. She gave them a way out, and Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian immediately followed suit. They smiled and said, Thank you, Boss Gu. Then, the 2 of them chatted awkwardly in a gentle tone, and let this matter pass. Yundong smiled. Isn't that good? Damn it, it was not easy to be a female director of mediation. She was so tired that she was sweating. She might as well carry them out. Yundong felt that she had to hire someone who was capable in this area. Have some tea. The 2 of them drank a cup of tea. After a moment of silence, they finally stood up and walked out of the room. Yundong was the first to come out. Many people in the hall were waiting absent-mindedly. They craned their necks to look at the backyard. Especially that Miss Bao. She was standing behind the big screen, waiting to see the situation immediately. Qiuyue wanted to go to the private room to take a look a few times, but she suppressed it in the end. The hall was still a little chaotic now. She still had to bring people to clean up and appease the guests. She could only suppress the dissatisfaction in her heart first. With Wei Lan in the private room, if anything really happened, it would be Wei Lan's responsibility. Thinking of this, Qiuyue was not in a hurry. When Yundong came out, everyone in the hall looked over. Miss Bao took a few steps forward and asked softly, How did it go? Yundong moved to the side, and Mrs. Yu walked out from behind her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 850 Trinkets. When everyone saw this, they were surprised. Oh, the 2 of them really stopped arguing. Not only did they stop arguing, but they also seemed to be able to talk calmly. They looked quite friendly when they walked together. Miss Bao's heart was itching. Miss Gu, what did you tell them? Nothing much. It's not like the 2 madams are unreasonable people. This is just a misunderstanding. Once the misunderstanding is resolved, won't everything be fine? Mrs. Yu nodded. Yes, it was just a misunderstanding. I'm really sorry for disturbing everyone. I was just being impulsive. Please don't take it to heart. The madams and young ladies present waved their hands and said that they were fine. In any case, they did not lose anything. They had even watched a show. Later, they could chat with others. Miss Bao did not get any useful information and sighed regretfully. Then she seemed to have thought of something and asked curiously, By the way, you said that you would give us something. What is it? As soon as she said this, an older woman beside her glared at her. How can you be so unruly? Who asks for a gift? I'm curious. Aren't you all curious? That person should be Miss Bao's elder. Although there was blame in her words, it was mostly teasing. On the other hand, when Miss Bao asked that question, a few people who liked to join in the fun asked, "Yes, we're really quite curious. Miss, what exactly is it? Let us see it." "All right, I'll go get it now," Yundong said with a smile. She also knew that the two of them definitely did not want to stay here anymore, so she nodded at them. "Please wait for a while." She had agreed to give the gifts to them. With that, Yundong turned around and walked towards the storeroom at the back. She had the key to the storeroom in her hand. Madame Dai had given it to her when she went to the Dai residence a few days ago. There were naturally no small gifts in the storeroom, but there were in Yundong's spatial storage. Actually, it wasn't anything special. It was just her paintings. It was mainly because she had too many things in her space, but she could not take most of them out to use. What she could take out was not enough to offer so many madams and young ladies outside. Except painting. Now that she had the conditions, she could make one painting a day almost every day when she was free. As time passed, wouldn't there be many paintings in the space? Moreover, it would not seem rude to give this. Hence, when Yundong arrived at the storeroom, she found a larger tray and placed all the paintings in her space inside. Some paintings were simple, and some were complicated. There were all kinds of flowers, plants, mountains, rivers, bustling streets, alleys, and food. Yundong's mind was filled with imagination. She drew everything. At this moment, these paintings were all rolled up and tied with a red string. When placed on the tray, they looked a little high-end. Yundong carried the tray out of the storeroom, and Weilon happened to rush over. She handed the tray to her. Weilon followed behind her and said, "Boss, I don't know where Xiuyue went." Yundong paused for a moment before continuing to walk forward. "Does she know that I'm the boss of New Tea Pavilion? If she knew, she might really escape in fear." Weilon shook her head. "I don't think so." She had wanted to find Xiuyue and tell her about Yundong's identity. It was more or less a way for her to be mentally prepared. As they spoke, the two of them returned to the hall. Most of the people's eyes were on her, but Yundong's gaze was on Mrs. Tian and the woman beside her. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 851. Can you get out? Where did this woman come from? Why didn't I see her before? As Yundong walked forward, she asked Weilon, "Who is this?" Weilon said, "She came with Mrs. Tian. She seems to be Mrs. Tian's sister-in-law." As she spoke, she suddenly lowered her voice. "I remember now. This sister-in-law seems to be Mrs. Ye's concubine's sister-in-law. She also married the eldest son of the Tian family's concubine. In that case, the two of them were in-laws?" Yundong frowned slightly. Just as she was about to walk to Mrs. Tian's side, she suddenly realized that Mrs. Tian, who had been comforted just now, had become irritable again. She looked at Mrs. Yu with uncontrollable anger. The woman beside her kept persuading her. "Forget it, sister-in-law. It's not like you don't know her personality. Let's just take a step back. Anyway, I've already gotten used to what happened at home in the past." "Get used to it." Mrs. Tian sneered. "You're a concubine's daughter, but I'm not. I'm the proper wife of the Tian family. Why should I let her?" A trace of anger flashed across the woman's face, but she quickly regained her composure and sighed. "You're right. I implicated you. I shouldn't have followed you here. She provoked us when she saw us coming. She was actually targeting me. Otherwise, even if you didn't come, she would still find trouble with me. It has nothing to do with you. Sister-in-law, you don't have to take the responsibility. It's just that since things have come to this, the rest doesn't matter. I'm just afraid that it won't be easy to explain to your family when you go back. This matter will definitely spread everywhere. I'm worried that the rumors outside will be disadvantageous to you." Yundong's face turned ashen when he heard that. All right. She knew that such a small matter would cause such a ruckus. The two rich ladies were arguing without caring about the occasion. It seemed like there was a troublemaker here. It wasn't easy for her to persuade them. She just went to the warehouse to get something. Was the fire starting to rise again? With her bad temper, it seemed like it would not work to convince people with virtue. Yundong stepped forward and patted the woman's shoulder. The latter turned around and looked at her in surprise. Yundong was still smiling, but her words shocked everyone present. Can you get the hell out of here? The woman's expression changed drastically. She suddenly stood up. What do you mean? What do you mean? I don't care if you want to sow discord between Mrs. Tian and Mrs. Yu. But please leave this door before you speak. Mrs. Tian looked at her in surprise. The woman met her gaze and quickly denied it. I didn't. What do you mean by sowing discord? I'm just worried about sister-in-law. Yundong did not have the time to argue with her. What did the Tian and Yu families have to do with her? The sisters-in-law started fighting. However, if they wanted to fight, they had to go home. You want to use our new Tea Pavilion as a raft on the spot? Dream on. Yundong sneered. Do you think everyone is a fool? Do you think I don't have a temper? Get lost, Wei Lan. Remember her. She's not allowed to come again. It was just a shop, but it had actually become a tool for others to fight openly and covertly. It would be strange if Yundong had a good expression. This woman thought that she had invited the two of them in with a good attitude just now because she did not dare to offend the guests or something. No matter what, the prefecture magistrate's wife was backing them up here. When it was time to be stubborn, Yundong would definitely not lower her voice and be nice. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 852. Draw it yourself. The woman's face turned pale. After a while, she looked at Yundong with tears in her eyes and said, how can you malign me like this? You treat my sincerity as heartless. I know that I'm a concubine's daughter. You all look down on me. As she spoke, she covered her tears and ran out. Yundong did not even turn around. She looked up at Mrs. Tian, who seemed to be deep in thought. She was also very speechless in her heart. She did not expect Mrs. Tian to be easy to provoke. Her temper was too easily ignited. On the other hand, Mrs. Yu had been watching from the side. At this moment, she walked over and thanked Yundong. Thank you. Actually, I also felt that this quarrel was a little strange previously. It turns out that there was a villain causing trouble. Someone beside them whispered, that's right. When you guys were arguing, that person kept standing far away. Mrs. Tian immediately felt a little awkward. At this moment, she had gradually regained her senses. She immediately smiled dryly at Yundong and said, it's my fault for not recognizing people well, and causing New Tea Pavilion to suffer. I'm sorry everyone. Since she had a good attitude, Yundong naturally would not treat her coldly. Anyway, it was fine as long as she did not cause trouble in New Tea Pavilion. But it was impossible for Yundong to still have a smile on her face. She asked Wei Lan to bring the tray over, and handed them 2 paintings. This is a small gift from New Tea Pavilion. I hope the 2 of you like it. What's this? Miss Bao couldn't help but ask curiously. Yundong took a roll and handed it over. Miss Bao blinked. For me. Yundong thought about it and took it back. Hey wait, I didn't say I didn't want it. Why did you take it back? Yundong smiled. It's not that I don't want to give it to you. I just want you to draw it yourself. She placed the painting back on the tray and pushed the tray forward. These are all paintings. Take it as a gift from me to everyone. However, the scenes and items drawn here are all different. Some are simple, and some are complicated. The paintings are all rolled up, so I don't know what's on the paintings. Why don't everyone take a look and treat it as fun? Miss Bao's eyes lit up when she heard that. All right. This is interesting. The others also walked over curiously. The gift is actually a painting. This is quite elegant. It's more like letting us draw it ourselves. That will depend on everyone's luck. My hands are itching. Can I be the first to draw it? Hey, that won't do. Who doesn't know that you're famous for being lucky? I think you should be the last. The person in front covered her mouth and laughed. You said that I'm lucky. Even if I'm the last, I might still draw the best. Everyone laughed, and the atmosphere in the hall instantly became lively and harmonious. On the other side, Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian lowered their heads and left quietly when no one was paying attention. However, when they walked out of the door, They were suddenly stunned when they saw a person in the carriage at the door. Immediately after, the two of them smiled dryly and hurriedly greeted the person before leaving. As for whether they would come to New Tea Pavilion in the future, they did not know. In short, after Mrs. Tian returned, there would probably be no peace at home. Gu Yundong naturally knew that they had left, but the atmosphere in the hall became more and more lively. Miss Bao was the first to draw a painting since she was the closest. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 853. No Heart to Resist. Someone couldn't help but move closer to her. Quick, take a look at what's on it. Miss Bao was inexplicably nervous, especially since everyone's attention was on her. It made her feel as if she was holding a fragile item worth 10,000 gold coins. After a long while, she held her breath and carefully pulled off the red string tied to the painting, spreading it out bit by bit. Halfway through, she suddenly rolled it up again. It made the hearts of the others standing beside her skip a beat. Gu Yundong could not help but rub her forehead. It's just a painting. Do you have to do this? Is there too little entertainment? After a while, Miss Bao opened the painting again. In the next moment, she let out a wow, and her face was filled with obvious joy. Those who were sitting further away heard this, and became more curious. However, they were no longer young ladies. They still had to be more dignified. However, there were still young ladies of similar age who exclaimed, "So cute." Gu Yundong glanced at it. Oh, it was the Q picture. She had drawn it when she saw a large group of children flying kites in Yongfu village last time. She suddenly had an idea. They were all big-headed and small-bodied. They were pulling the kite string in their hands as groups. There were also some who sat at the side and watched. Some were eating with food in their hands. Some were teary-eyed and wanted to play but didn't dare to. Some were playing pranks. There were also two children fighting with two stalks of grass sticking out from their heads. Their postures were all different and vivid. However, without exception, they all had big eyes and small mouths. They were even cuter than dolls, making one's heart tremble. Women had no intention of resisting such a cute thing. Not only did Miss Bao like it, but even the people beside her were the same. Someone asked Gu Yundong, "Are the other paintings all like this?" Gu Yundong shook her head. "No, there are only 3 or 4 of these." Everyone was a little disappointed, but they still rubbed their palms together, hoping that they could get one of these 3 or 4 paintings. There were even people who discussed with Miss Bao and wanted to exchange with her. Gu Yundong asked everyone to sit down. "I'll get Wei Lan to bring a tray over. Everyone will have a share." One by one. Although everyone was anxious, they all sat back down. As expected, Wei Lan walked past the crowd with a tray. At this moment, be it the guests on the second floor or the people in the private rooms, they all heard the commotion and came over. There were also a few children among them, but they were all restrained by their elders and did not make a fuss. Soon, someone drew a painting and opened it hopefully. Unfortunately, there was no such painting that she wanted. She was a little disappointed. However, soon after, she became slightly happy. This seems to be a charcoal drawing that's been popular recently. Is it a charcoal drawing? This drawing is too lifelike. Look, there's a shadow here. The people around them all looked over, including Miss Bao. The one in her hand was not a charcoal drawing. When she heard that it was a recent trend, a madam said, "I've heard of this charcoal drawing. My son has been learning it recently. Sigh, if only I could draw it later." "How is this a trinket? This is clearly something good. Isn't it?" Discussions broke out in the hall. Everyone looked at Gu Yundong in amazement. The people in the carriage outside the door had been watching silently. One of them could not take it anymore and said unhappily, "Madam, did I say anything wrong? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 854. She's the third boss. I don't know where she came from. It's fine if she became the master of our new tea pavilion without permission, but she even became the master of the place. Wei Lan just had to listen to her as if she was the master, and let her win people over. The person who spoke was Xiaoyi, who had disappeared earlier. At this moment, she was standing beside the carriage, And the person sitting in the carriage was Madame Dai. Xiaoyi originally wanted to stop Wei Lan, but when she thought about how Wei Lan had been going against her today, she felt especially uncomfortable. In New Tea Pavilion, the person with the highest chance of competing with her for power was Wei Lan. As for Su Qing, she didn't care at all. If she took this opportunity to make Madame Dai's impression of Wei Lan worse, wouldn't that be killing two birds with one stone? Coincidentally, Madame Dai had actually come this morning. Xiaoyi knew that she would go to a friend's house not far from here in the afternoon, so she simply ran over to look for her. When she returned, she happened to see Gu Yundong scolding Mrs. Tian's sister-in-law. She even chased away our New Tea Pavilion's guest and directly said that that person was sowing discord and offended Mrs. Tian and Mrs. Yu. This is too bad for our New Tea Pavilion's reputation. Madam, you can't let her off. The more Xiaoyi spoke, the angrier she became. However, she did not hear Madame Dai's voice for a long time and was a little puzzled. However, when she looked up, she realized that Madame Dai was smiling. Xiaoyi was a little stunned. Madam Dai finally glanced at her. Sowing discord? Isn't it what you're doing now? Xiaoyi's face instantly turned pale. She hurriedly lowered her head. This servant doesn't dare. Madame Dai looked at her with disappointment in her eyes, and did not continue. She only got the maidservant beside her to help her out of the carriage, and walked towards New Tea Pavilion with a smile. Usually, she would have noticed it as soon as she arrived, but at this moment, her attention was focused on the paintings. No one noticed her arrival for a long time. It was not until she reached the counter that someone finally said in surprise, Madame Dai, you're here? Gu Yundong also turned around and smiled. As Madame Dai walked towards the guests, an older lady said, Madame Dai, where did you get these paintings? Doesn't your heart ache to send them out like this? I didn't take those paintings out. If she doesn't feel sorry for it, why should I feel sorry for it? That person was stunned. He glanced at Gu Yundong and asked hesitantly, where did Madame Dai find this female shopkeeper? She's so generous and treats those as trinkets. She gave them away just like that. Gu Yundong was dressed differently from Wei Lan and the rest, so everyone guessed that her status might be higher. Yes, you have good taste. Madame Dai became smug. She walked to Gu Yundong's side and patted her hand. She said to the guests, Are you envious? But this is not the shopkeeper of our New Tea Pavilion. She is a boss of New Tea Pavilion. Boss? This was the boss of New Tea Pavilion? How was that possible? Although they had long heard that there were 3 bosses in New Tea Pavilion, the third one was too mysterious. They had never seen her before, and she did not even come when the shop opened. As time passed, there were rumors that there was no third owner at New Tea Pavilion at all. There was only Madame Dai and Xiong. However, they did not understand why those people had to fabricate a boss. They didn't expect that there really was one. Moreover, she had appeared in front of them at this moment. She was young but plenty of methods. She had even given them a trinket just now. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 855. You're actually such a Madame Dai. Everyone present looked surprised. Many people had already re-evaluated Gu Yundong's status in their hearts. Miss Bao was even more shocked. She actually didn't guess. Yes, Xiong had said that the third boss of New Tea Pavilion had the surname Gu. Moreover, she came and went in the hall as she pleased and chatted happily. Why didn't she think in that direction? Miss Bao was extremely vexed. To think she said that she knew everything about the prefectural city. Her face hurt. However, among the people present, one of them was even more shocked by Madame Dai's words. Her face turned pale, and her legs were so weak that she could not stand. She sat on the ground. Why? How could that be? Was she the boss? The boss of the Gu family? Then why didn't she say anything? Was she deliberately watching her make a fool of herself? Wei Lan was the first to see it. Seeing this, she sighed inwardly and walked over to help her. Get up first. Later, go and apologize to Boss Gu. Perhaps Boss Gu won't make things difficult for you on account of Madame Dai. Xiaoyi suddenly pinched the back of her hand. Her neatly trimmed nails still scratched a bloody mark on the back of her hand. Hiss, Wei Lan cried out in pain. Xiaoyi, let go. However, Xiaoyi raised her head and looked at her with hatred in her eyes. You did it on purpose. You know that she's the boss of the Gu family, right? That's why you worked so hard to please her, but you deliberately didn't tell me. I didn't. You did. Xiaoyi grabbed her hand. You watched as I spoke ill of her behind her back. You didn't tell me anything and waited for this moment, right? Wei Lan, you're too sinister. You're simply crazy. Whether you believe it or not, I really didn't know that she was the owner of the Gu family. After I found out, I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't find you. You went to look for Madame Dai. Wei Lan pulled her hand back. Looking at Xiaoyi, who only had resentment in her eyes and did not know how to repent, she completely lost the desire to talk to her. She stood up and said coldly, You're on your own. Then, she walked towards Gu Yundong. At this moment, Madame Dai pulled Gu Yundong and introduced her formally again. This is the third boss of New Tea Pavilion, Gu Yundong. She is very busy, so she did not have time to come here after opening. If we had not written to her to urge her, she might not have come. She is so heartless to throw this shop to us. There was intimacy in her words, and she sounded even more serious. Everyone present could tell that this boss Gu had a very high status in New Tea Pavilion. Gu Yundong said helplessly, I'm not as heartless as Auntie says. Look, I came immediately after you sent me a letter. See how loyal I am to you. Madame Dai leaned closer to her and whispered, If you're really loyal, teach me how to put on your makeup another day. Gu Yundong was speechless. You're actually like this, Madame Dai. She smiled and nodded. All right. That's good. Madame Dai was instantly satisfied. Since you're here today, I have something to tell you. Let's find a room. Gu Yundong nodded. Madame Dai greeted everyone and excused herself. The others had the painting in their hands. They knew that the two of them had something to say, so they did not ask them to stay. Miss Bao wanted to know more about Gu Yundong. Unfortunately, she was glared at by her elders, so she could only find another opportunity. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 856. You have good eyes. Gu Yundong and Madame Dai walked towards the backyard. However, when they reached the screen, she stopped in her tracks. Madame Dai asked, What's wrong? I'll introduce some people to Auntie. Gu Yundong pointed at Yunshu and the others who were sitting on chairs and talking to someone not far away. They had agreed to let them wait in the room, but it seemed like they could not wait any longer. They had already come to the hall. Not only was he here, but he and Yuanzhi were also playing with two other children of similar age. The four of them leaned on the table and looked at a painting. Eldest Aunt Gu was watching them from the side. The other two children's families were also present. However, perhaps because they could not speak to Eldest Aunt Gu, they remained silent and drank tea and ate. When Gu Yundong and Madame Dai walked over, the two madams stood up. Gu Yundong nodded at them before introducing Gu Dafeng to Madame Dai. This is my aunt Gu Dafeng. Madame Dai was surprised. You found her. She knew that Gu Yundong was looking for her eldest aunt and uncle. The last time Dai Wenhuo went back, he did not mention this to her. That was why she was so surprised. Gu Yundong smiled. Yes, I did. Then she introduced Yunshu and Yuanzhi. Madame Dai looked at the two obedient young kids and could not help but say, Are your younger siblings so lovable? Yunshu nodded. Auntie, you have keen eyes. Madame Dai was stunned. Then she covered the corners of her mouth and smiled. She said to Gu Yundong, As expected, he's your younger brother. It's obvious that he learned it from you. No, she was wronged. Gu Yundong held her forehead and instructed Yunshu and the rest to have fun. She had something to discuss with Madame Dai. Eldest Aunt Gu said, Go ahead. I'll take care of them. The two of them left the hall and went to the room at the back. As soon as they left, the two madams who were originally not talking to Eldest Aunt Gu immediately came over curiously and asked, Is Boss Gu your niece? There were also people who heard this and came over to inquire. When Yunshu and Yuanzhi saw this, they felt that something was wrong and hurriedly pulled Eldest Aunt Gu back to the room. On the other hand, the two children had become familiar with Yunshu and followed her with their short legs. The child's family was speechless. However, the people in the hall did not quiet down because of their departure. Instead, the discussion became more and more intense. Still, no one knew which family Gu Yundong belonged to. After some guesses, there was no result. Even so, they all liked the paintings she took out. Although some people were unlucky and only drew the simplest ones, it did not stop them from admiring it. Initially, Gu Yundong thought that some people would lose interest in leaving New Tea Pavilion after the matter with the two madams was over. But now no one was willing to leave. Gu Yundong was very satisfied with this scene, and so was Madame Dai. When the two of them entered the room, Madame Dai heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I heard about Mrs. Yu and Mrs. Tian. It's all thanks to you being present today. Otherwise, if we let them continue arguing, we wouldn't be able to do business." She frowned. "I'm afraid they won't have the face to come again in the future." Gu Yundong had also guessed that Mrs. Yu might come again, but Mrs. Tian might not. "Auntie, I think we lack a shopkeeper." Madame Dai clapped her hands. "I was just about to tell you about this." As soon as she finished speaking, a sobbing voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Madame Dai, Boss Gu, I was wrong. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 857. Returning to her original form. The sudden sound stunned the two of them. The maidservant standing behind Madame Dai frowned and bowed for instructions. "Madam, can you let me go out and deal with it?" Madame Dai looked at Gu Yundong. "What are your plans?" "Auntie, you can make the decision. If I go, I'm afraid she won't be convinced." Madame Dai nodded and instructed the maidservant behind her, "Yunshu, go ahead and let her understand what she did wrong." "Yes." Yunshu nodded at the two of them and opened the door of the room. She looked at Xiaoyi, who was kneeling outside the door. This room was specially spared by Gu Yundong. It was in a corner beside the kitchen warehouse and was used as an office. It was quite far from the room where the other guests were, and was not easy to see. Therefore, Xiaoyi's commotion did not disturb the other guests. Seeing Yunshu, Xiaoyi hurriedly knelt down and took a few steps forward. "Sister Yunshu, please help me plead with Madam. I was wrong. I was really wrong." Yunshu looked down at her. "What did you do wrong?" "I didn't know Boss Gu's identity. I was disrespectful to Boss Gu. I deserved to die. Yunshu shook her head in disappointment. She still did not know what was wrong. Even if Boss Gu didn't reveal her identity, she's still a guest. There's no reason for New Tea Pavilion to chase guests out. Xiaoyi felt wronged and cried uncontrollably. "Yes, I was too anxious. I just heard the two young masters say that they wanted to stay here until closing time. They also wanted to tour all the rooms here, so I thought wrongly." "Were you thinking in the wrong direction?" Yunshu sneered. When New Tea Pavilion first opened, many people had the same idea. They wanted to see the other rooms in the backyard. But how did Madame and Miss Nia deal with them? "Have you forgotten?" Xiaoyi's face turned pale. Yunshu said, "Madame has repeatedly reminded you that if you encounter a guest with such a request, you have to tactfully explain to the other party that this is not in line with the rules. If you encounter someone who is pestering you endlessly, you have to forcefully carry them out. But what about you? Not to mention that Boss Gu did not make a request in front of you. Even if she did, the first thing you should do is not to chase the guest away." Xiaoyi was completely speechless. She was just thinking that she was with Madame Dai. Such a small matter. Yunshu sighed in her heart and shook her head. "You don't have to stay in New Tea Pavilion in the future. Go pack up and return to the Dai residence in a while." Xiaoyi suddenly raised her head and immediately kowtowed on the ground to beg for mercy. "No, Sister Yunshu, I was wrong. Madam, Boss Gu, I was wrong. Please don't chase me away." How many people wanted to come to New Tea Pavilion but could not? Madame had once said that if they could do it well in New Tea Pavilion in the future, when the shop opened elsewhere, old people like them could be promoted as shopkeepers. At that time, they would be much better than the maidservants and grannies in the residence. If there was someone with outstanding ability, Madame would even strip them of their slave status and live a glorious life. This was a job that many people would envy. Xiaoyi knew that even Yunshu, who was in front of her, was tempted. Now she had finally reached this step with great difficulty. Yet she was going to be beaten back to her original state? No, that's not right. It's worse than the original. She had already been abandoned by Madame. Even if she returned to the Dai residence, it was impossible for her to do the same job as before. She would probably be exiled to the manor and die of old age there. Xiaoyi cried bitterly, but Yunshu frowned. She found two old women from the kitchen who had come out to watch the show and quickly pulled her down. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 858. Candidate for the Shopkeeper. Xiaoyi was pulled down, and it finally quieted down outside the door. In the room, Madame Dai could not help but shake her head and say, "It's my fault for not recognizing people. I've troubled you. Auntie, you're being too serious. People change. How can I blame you? Besides, I didn't suffer any grievances. She just had a bad attitude. She didn't hit or scold me. It was just that this attitude was not suitable for new Tea Pavilion. Forget it, let's not talk about her. Let's talk about the shopkeeper. It was just a maidservant." Madame Dai would not really take it to heart. It wasn't that she couldn't leave the shop. Instead, the shopkeeper's matter was the most important thing. In fact, there was a shopkeeper in New Tea Pavilion in the beginning. She was also found by Madame Dai. Moreover, she had been a shopkeeper in a jewelry pavilion in the past. She was also capable. Madame Dai trusted her and complied with all aspects. Logically speaking, it was not a problem to manage this milk tea shop. That person was also very confident at first, but after more than 10 days, she suddenly suggested that she was not qualified and asked Madame Dai to choose another talent. Later on, Madame Dai learned that although this shopkeeper had worked at the jewelry pavilion in the past, she also served some madams and young ladies. However, it was still very different from this milk tea shop. First of all, the madams and young ladies of the real rich families rarely went to the jewelry pavilion personally, because they felt that there were too few. Instead, the shop staff had to customize for them, and took the latest products from the shop to their residences. Secondly, the guests who came to the jewelry pavilion wouldn't come in batches like this. Those with insufficient status would be entertained by other waiters, and those with high status would be invited to the backyard to be received one-on-one. Thirdly, the shopkeeper's previous jewelry shop was not big, so this shopkeeper actually did not have any powerful backing. She was not confident and bowed too much to customers. This led to her being the same in the milk tea shop. She did not look as comfortable as Xiaoyi and Wei Lan, who were maidservants from the Dai mansion and Nye mansion. Madame Dai could not help but sigh in her heart. She wanted to find someone who could stand up straight, but such a person had the backing of a master. It was not easy for her to poach them. It couldn't be helped. The shopkeeper of New Tea Pavilion was gone just like that. When Yundong went to the Dai residence that day, Madame Dai had told her about these problems while she was putting on makeup. Therefore, Yundong had been thinking about this shopkeeper problem for the past 2 days. However, she did not have such connections. She still had to rely on Madame Dai or Xiong. "Auntie, since you're talking about the shopkeeper, do you have someone in mind?" At the mention of this, Madame Dai's face finally lit up. "There's someone. I visited a friend of mine today because of her. My friend's family is in the capital. A few days ago, a nanny came back from the capital and said that she was here to retire. In fact, she didn't want to get involved in the disputes of the capital's main family. This nanny has some ability. The young lady of that family learned the rules from her. She has really seen the world. I finally convinced her to come to this shop tomorrow to take a look. When the time comes, I'll try my best to let her stay." A nanny from the capital? Although she's here to retire, she's not old. She doesn't need to do anything in this shop. She's just here to oversee it. With her around, such a thing will definitely not happen today. When I was young, I was also in the capital and had to receive a few pointers from her. As long as she's willing to come, it won't be a problem. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 859. Gu Dafeng's target is firm. Madame Dai explained the nanny's situation in detail. This nanny was a rather transparent person. Since she was unwilling to get involved in those disputes, she naturally would not interfere much in the residences when they arrived at the Xuanhe prefecture. If not for Madame Dai's early arrival, the nanny would have packed her bags and planned to go to the manor to truly retire. In any case, since she was unwilling to care about the matters in the residence, wouldn't she be able to help her manage the matters in the shop? Madame Dai was quite confident. Her milk tea shop was so novel. Madame Qiuyue would definitely like it. Yundong nodded. All right, we'll come back tomorrow. Madame Dai heaved a sigh of relief. I was thinking of calling all the workers and cooks in new Tea Pavilion over to meet her. You can also take the opportunity to see which people are not suitable and let them go back. Madame Dai was also very helpless. Who asked the people she liked to have problems? It was the same for the previous shopkeeper. Today, Xiaoyi had directly violated the taboo of new Tea Pavilion. Her ability to choose people was too trash. Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. Logically speaking, with Madame Dai's ability, she should not have done this. Otherwise, she would not be able to become the mistress of a family and manage the huge backyard of the Dai residence. She was the one who chose the servants in the Dai residence. Didn't the maidservants who served her know the rules and do things? However, she had suffered setbacks in the business world time and time again, causing her to lose her temper. This milk tea shop was currently the most popular. Madame Dai felt that Yundong was a lucky star, and she needed her to control the situation. Yundong had no objections to seeing Madame Qiuyue tomorrow. The two of them discussed the shopkeeper for a long time. It was not until the shop was closed that Yunshu came to remind them of the time. Madame Dai immediately asked Yunshu to buy some food from a restaurant not far away. They would eat dinner in the shop so that they wouldn't go back too late. Besides, Yundong wanted to show Yunshu and Yuanzhi the rooms at the back. Speaking of this, Madame Dai was proud. Who asked you not to come when you opened for business back then? When this shop was just renovated, Xiong and I liked it very much. Xiong even said that she wouldn't go back. She would switch to a different room every day and stay here in the future. It's a good opportunity to look after the shop. Yundong could not help but want to laugh. Then why didn't you agree? Don't. The Nye family will settle scores with me later. As the two of them spoke, they led Yunshu and the others to visit the rooms one by one. The two children were overjoyed. Even eldest Aunt Gus' eyes were shining. After walking around, the sky was already a little dark. Only then did Yundong bring Yunshu and Yuanzhi, who were still extremely excited, as well as eldest Aunt Gu, who seemed to have a certain goal in her eyes and was becoming more and more determined, back to the small courtyard. As soon as eldest Aunt Gu entered the house, she could not wait to return to her room. She said that she wanted to tidy up the wooden carvings. She could clearly feel how successful Yundong was today. The business of the two shops was booming. If Yundong could make something out of nothing, so could she. Even if she couldn't compare to Yundong, as long as she worked hard, she could also have her own shop in the future. Her life would definitely get better and better. At this moment, Dafeng's goal was exceptionally firm. The next day, Yunshu and Yuanzhi followed Dajiang to Tianhai Academy and saw the stone wall engraved with names. As Dajiang was leading them, the two of them even entered the academy. After seeing this academy that had 100 years of history, they were overwhelmed with emotions the entire day. Meanwhile, Yundong brought Tong Shuetao to the milk tea shop again. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 860. This person is good. Xiong was also here. She was the first to arrive and was already eating in the hall. Madame Dai went to fetch Madame Qiuyue. As soon as they entered, everyone in New Tea Pavilion was present. It was Yundong's first time seeing Madame Qiuyue. How should she put it? Madame Dai was right. Madame Qiuyue was good. When she pulled a long face, even Yundong felt a little uneasy. Her hands and feet were placed very properly, and she did not dare to look around. It was exactly the same feeling as when she met the dean in elementary school in her previous life. It was simply sour and refreshing. If she was standing in the crowd like this, who would dare to quarrel in New Tea Pavilion? Who would dare? Anyway, Yundong did not dare. However, she stopped pulling a long face and only smiled slightly. The expression on her face instantly became approachable and kind. Even the waiter of New Tea Pavilion dared to joke with her. Most importantly, Madame Qiuyue was multi-talented. She was proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was omnipotent in brewing tea and making incense. Even if a noble old lady came, Madame Qiuyue could accompany her for most of the day and not bring any awkwardness. Stay. Such a person had to stay. However, Yundong did not show too much enthusiasm. Madame Qiuyue was obviously very opinionated. If you were too enthusiastic, she would not be too happy. She introduced the situation of the milk tea shop as usual. Yundong answered Madame Qiuyue's questions in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. After walking around, the two of them chatted the most. There were specializations in the industry. Madame Qiuyue did not know much about business, but she knew how to read people, teach people, read accounts, and get along with customers. It was enough. After Madame Qiuyue finished asking, she told them to consider it. Xiong was a little disappointed, but Yundong and Madame Dai's eyes lit up. When Madame Dai brought her back, she couldn't help but say, "My milk tea shop will definitely be good in the future, right? Then you're lucky to have met such a scheming little girl." "Nanny, are you coming tomorrow?" Madame Qiuyue sat in the carriage and closed her eyes in silence for a while before saying with a smile, "Yes, it's good to work in another environment." Madame Dai became happy. After sending Madame Qiuyue back, she returned to the milk tea shop and announced such good news. Xiong's eyes lit up. Although Yundong was also happy, she looked much calmer than expected. However, before she left, she specially said to Su Qing, "Learn more from Madame Qiuyue in the future, especially when it comes to how she treats others. It will be good for you." From the looks of it, Madame Dai would definitely open a milk tea shop elsewhere in the future. Now that the prefecture magistrate Dai was being placed in an important position, he would probably be transferred back to the capital by the emperor in 2 years. Madame Dai might have already found a suitable shop in the capital. If Su Qing learned more, even if she didn't go to the capital in the future, she could still go to other county cities to be a master. Yundong returned to the small courtyard and realized that eldest Aunt Gu was still in her room. She seemed to have been in the house for the entire day. Yundong stood outside the window and looked, only to find that she was muttering to the wooden carvings. She did not know what she was thinking. Her uncle sat on a chair beside her and shushed her softly. On the third day, Yundong had just woken up when Dafeng carried her bag and prepared to leave. Yundong was stunned for a moment and quickly stopped her. "Aunt, where are you going?" If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible.